Hello. The red light. Oh, face.
All right, I want you to say that.
So that folks watching can hear what's happening. Right, otherwise you just go quiet. I think that's. 1 minute. Every minute matters. Stick to the process. Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening and welcome. Welcome, everyone, to our regular council meeting of Monday, September 9th. As we begin, I do wish to acknowledge that we are having this meeting on the lands of the Sooke and Shaanu nations, and we honor and thank the nations for their ongoing stewardship for the water and the lands and the relationship that continues to this day. Now, tonight we will begin our meeting in a different form as we celebrate a change in command of Sooke Fire and Rescue Services. Thank you very much, everyone. You may take your seat. I am very honored to stand before you today as we mark a significant moment in our community's history. It is with heartfelt gratitude that I begin by formally thanking Chief Ted Ryder for his exemplary service here in Sooke. His dedication and leadership has left an indelible mark on our community. In the same spirit of appreciation and forward-looking optimism, I'm very pleased to formally welcome our new District of Sooke Fire Chief, Chief Wayne Kennedy. Chief Kennedy assumed his new role with us on Saturday, July 20th of 2024, and what a start it was. Just 2 days later, on Monday, July 22nd, Sooke Fire and Rescue was the first on the scene of what would become known as the Old Man Lake wildfire. In response, Chief Kennedy swiftly mobilized the team and successfully led the tactical evacuation of the Spring Salmon Campground and the surrounding park area. Under his leadership, the timely activation of the Emergency Operations Center was ensured, demonstrating his leadership, care for his team, and the dedication to the safety of our community. Chief Kennedy brings with him over 27 years in experience in fire services. His distinguished career began with the District of North Vancouver Fire and Rescue Service in February of 1997. During his tenure, he served as a firefighter, was promoted to Assistant Chief of Operations in 2009, and further advanced to Deputy Fire Chief of Operations in 2013. Since joining us in Sooke as Deputy Chief in March of 2023, Chief Kennedy has been instrumental in several key initiatives, including transitioning our division to 24/7 fire rescue services, advancing the Community Wildfire Resilience Plan, supporting the Sooke Fire Smart program, and leading the expansion of our emergency management program service area. It is with great enthusiasm and confidence that we welcome Chief Kennedy into his new role. And at this time, I would like to invite Chief Kennedy to please come forward to receive our District of Sooke pin. And I need to pin you with this. Right here? Right there? Okay. Have to be careful. No. Uh-oh, I can't see without my glasses. Okay, look at that.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, you stay with me. Okay. It is important to acknowledge that being a part of the fire service extends beyond wearing the uniform. The support, understanding, and sacrifice of family members are a foundational part of the strength and resilience that our firefighters bring to service. In recognition of this family commitment that is an integral part of fire rescue services, I would also like to take this opportunity to recognize Chief Kennedy's family, including his parents who are watching online and his wife who is here with us today. Thank you, Chief Kennedy. On behalf of the council and the entire team at Sooke Fire and Rescue Emergency Program Services, we look forward to years of service and leadership as we embark on the next chapter in Sooke's history. So at this point, we will take a quick photo and then we will resume and go into our regular agenda. So council, if you can please join me. Does this work? You should stand. Okay, so Chief, we'll stand here.
I'll block it out.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. As we begin tonight, I do want to formally thank and acknowledge all of the crews that were involved with the Old Man wildfire, and just to give thanks to district staff, the local governments from other areas, and all of the crews that were involved in this event. Thank you so much. And also, sadly, you may recall back in July, we said farewell to Norm McInnes. Norm McInnes joined us as our CAO in 2019. And sadly, he bravely fought a battle with cancer that took him in the end. And on behalf of the district and council, I just want to express our shared condolences to his family and his friends. Norm made a lot of friends and was very active here in the community while he was with us. So I just wanted to share those remarks. Okay, so council, I'll now turn your attention to item 3, which is approval of tonight's agenda. There's a few matters, procedural matters that I just wish to share with everyone here. So as you'll see, we do have public question and comment period coming up as item 8. But a few notes. There has been changes, as you may know, to the way that public hearings are held. And while I appreciate that this may be confusing, we do have new legislation regarding public hearings and such regarding zoning amendments. So where items are consistent with an official community plan, public hearing is prohibited, but public input is welcome. So to that item, under item 11.1, for 2032 Maple Avenue South, there will be no public hearing. However, public input is welcome up to 2 minutes tonight. For item 11.2, that one has the highway closure, removal of highway dedication is a statutory requirement. So again, public input is welcome tonight for up to 2 minutes. Pardon me? Or that one will have a separate, okay. Never mind. 11.2 is no public input tonight. It will have its own particular public hearing at a scheduled advertised date. 11.3 is required by legislation to have a dedicated public hearing. So that is for, get the address correct here. So for 2008 Murray Road, OCP and zoning bylaw amendment, that particular item, should it advance by council, will go to a scheduled public hearing. So tonight, there is no public input permitted on that item. So for those of you that are here to speak on item 11.3, that will occur at a future date. But we cannot welcome, because council needs to enter every public hearing with an open mind. That will have a scheduled hearing at a specific date where we can hear from all sides. Otherwise, all members of the public are able to speak on the remaining items that are here for up to 2 minutes. And given the length of our agenda, and it's wonderful to see so many of you here, we will be timing the 2 minutes so that we can advance through the agenda. And the delegation will have 5 minutes. And the rest, council, you're familiar with the procedural bylaws, so we'll get right to it. So I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, so we will begin with approval of tonight's agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Beto, seconded by St. Pierre. All those in favor, please. None opposed, that's carried unanimously. Adoption of meeting minutes from August the 6th of special council meeting. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Betos. Questions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor. None opposed, that's carried unanimously. So now I'd like to welcome item 6, delegations, the Sooke Region Food Systems Network update to council. So welcome to our delegation. If you could please turn on the microphone, and when you start speaking, we'll start timing and we'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Danny Stancer.
My name's Levi Meganber.
This presentation is about the Sooke Region Food Systems Network and the increasing access to food in the Sooke Region project. In 2023, a group of service providers successfully applied for project funding to increase access to food in the region. Working collaboratively, we've been able to accomplish quite a bit with grant funding. This project supported hiring a food security specialist, establishing the Sooke Region Food Systems Network, community outreach meals, food distribution, workshops and cooking classes, local food system resources and marketing materials, and a local food box program for families. One of the project deliverables was the development of the Sooke Region Food Systems Network. From November to June, we met monthly to discuss community programs and future opportunities. The network has allowed us to establish new community relationships, build capacity, and strengthen our food system, making us a more resilient community. In a short period of time, we have supported organization and project planning, developed food distribution systems, increased community engagement and skills through outreach and educational programs, identified food processing and co-op opportunities, promoted circular economies, and developed local food systems resources. We have also applied to several grants. This project exceeded our goals and expectations as we are able to develop a robust network of organizations, secure local government participation, and community organization commitment to maintain the Sooke Region Food Systems Network. So now what? The exciting news is that Sooke Foodchi has agreed to host the network meetings moving forward. The network and its members are working on finalizing project plans, the Sooke Community Gardens project, increasing food processing and distribution capacity, continuing to develop resources, events, and workshops, supporting advocacy and policy development, and strengthening community relationships with residents, organizations, local governments, and the network. Looking to the future, we've identified opportunities in 6 areas: water security and infrastructure, community food spaces, agri-food business and tourism, food production, food literacy and education, and advocacy. These 6 areas and opportunities were identified by the reoccurring topics discussed during network meetings.
Excellent. Thanks, Danny. So just to build on that, so the District of Sooke has already done a lot in terms of laying the framework and groundwork for sustainable food systems within Sooke. So we have a lot of supportive policy. I think what we lack now is an action plan to kind of keep moving some of these vital initiatives forward. And so what I will say is this is largely due to capacity constraints within Sooke broadly, not just within the District of Sooke itself, but as well within local nonprofits. So I think in terms of opportunities moving forward, looking to build capacity to support food security is going to be a really vital next step to continuing to this momentum, continue to carry that forward into the future. And one of the key themes there is continuing to support the Sooke Region Food Systems Network and all the great work that Danny and all of the nonprofits that have been working together have been building and moving forward. And so really the one biggest piece there is we get grants to do these fantastic projects and they tend to be one-offs and then they disappear. And sometimes these great vital initiatives kind of peter out and don't continue to move forward. So one way that Sooke could continue to support food security moving forward is by helping to build that capacity. And whether that's sort of internal with staff support or with supporting a local nonprofit that's really spearheading some of these vital initiatives or a bit of both. I think that's a really key way we can kind of continue to make this positive momentum moving forward. As well, as I mentioned, Sooke has a huge amount of food security policy in local plans. And so I think as we look to update the OCP and some other sort of key strategic planning initiatives is just continuing to be mindful of food security from a strategic planning perspective. So with that, I will say Sooke Foodchi, as Danny mentioned, is looking to step into chairing the Food Systems Network project moving forward. It is a bit of a time capacity for sure. So Foodchi will be looking to come forward to council in the future with a proposal for a shared services agreement. And we look forward to working with Sooke moving forward to continue to improve food security here in the Sooke region. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful. Thank you very much for providing us with this update today and all the wonderful work you're doing in our community. It's really appreciated. We look forward to receiving that at a future date from Sooke Foodchi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 7, which is the report of our Chief Administrative Officer. It's here for information. It's great.
Thank you. Just a couple things I wanted to highlight in my report. Similar to Mayor Tate, I just wanted to acknowledge from the staff perspective the passing of our former CAO, Norm McInnes. I worked with him from his first day here. He was a great leader. He was a great mentor. Staff morale was at an all-time low when he was hired, and he worked really hard to pull us out of the weeds and bring some energy back into this office and remind us why we're here and what we were, why we started working at the district. And it's to serve the community and, fill their needs. And he was passionate about that. And he left a really great example and a great legacy. And he left big shoes to fill. So I am doing my best to fill those shoes, and just thoughts and prayers to his family and especially his wife, Corey. And just know, Corey, if you're listening to this, he will not be forgotten here. He is mentioned quite often downstairs, and to any new staff coming in, knows who Norm was and knows the hard work he put in behind the scenes that the public probably doesn't see. But I can tell you behind the scenes, he did a lot of heavy lifting, and I really greatly appreciate that. On a more happy note, again, to the ceremony today for our new fire chief, Chief Kennedy. Again, started working with the chief on his first day as well, and he's a great addition to the team. He's going to serve this community well, and the community is in great hands with Chief Kennedy serving us, and he's building a great team around him. And I'm just really excited for this fire department and the services it's going to provide to this community, and the ever expanding, not just out of fire now we're into emergency, fire smart, all of these fun, interesting things. So it's an exciting time to be in the fire department, and they're lucky to have Chief Kennedy lead them through this change. And the last piece, there's lots of items on the agenda related to traffic, et cetera. Just wanted to quickly highlight the Trotters Road project, because while I appreciate everyone wants it done faster, the fact that it is not behind schedule for a massive project like this should be commended. I appreciate everyone wants it done yesterday, and so do we, trust me. We are working every effort we can to get this project done. I just want to remind everyone, we also need to be sensitive to the archaeological sensitivities. This is not our land, this is the South land. So, we have to do things in a certain order, and sometimes things take longer. And I appreciate that. And we are trying to be as open and honest about where we're at with things. And at any time, if the community has any questions, as they have been, just continue to send them in, and we will continue to provide as detailed answers as we can on that. But I'm really excited. We're getting to the final stages of this project, and it's going to be very exciting to get this completed. It's a major piece of our transportation master plan leg, and hopefully it will make the commute home a little smoother, but we know that's not the end. Just getting charters open is not the end. There's going to be a lot more work to do and a lot more heavy lifting, and we have the council and the team and the community support in place to do it, and we're looking forward to working together and getting this done. I will just leave that there and answer any questions.
Any questions from members of council? Okay, so a motion. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, thank you for your report. It's a very substantial report out on transportation infrastructure and traffic concerns. Now, you did note in your report that the Sooke Traffic Committee's report was received from the chamber back in mid-July or later July, and you run it through a process. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I think probably next meeting, we're going to have a more detailed report, because we're presenting the details to council later today. But the idea would be to have a public information report provided hopefully at the next council meeting with some more details. But I can probably maybe hand it over to Mr. Carter, who could briefly just touch on the work that he did over the summer with that group.
Yeah, thank you. Through Councillor Bateman, to your worship. We basically were provided with the solutions. There were 7 short-term solutions presented. Within 2 days, I had my recommendations and my feedback put to those solutions. We retained the president of Watts Consulting, who was one of the lead traffic engineers specialists in BC, provided her with all the solutions that were presented, as well as my comments. We had those analyzed within 2 weeks. All the findings were presented. We then independently hired M4 Consulting with Michelle Makovich, who is the president of APEG BC and former my position in Langford as director of engineering. She has gone over my review as well as Watts engineering review. We have basically recommendations presented on each of these solutions going forward to council tonight in camera, and we will have a follow-up as Rachel alluded to in our next meeting.
And just within your report, there is the best option for a short-term solution is to continue looking at timing of light signals coming through town center.
Yes, that's correct. So one of the recommendations is to proceed with the work we were doing on signal timing on the highway with the ministry. Since then, I was in process when these solutions were presented of having Watts Consulting prepare a proposal to get that work done on the 4 major intersections going from Sooke River Road all the way to Otter Point Road. Report was presented to us with the cost. I was able to talk to ICBC. I've had half the project funded through ICBC, the other half or quarter committed by MOTI. We will fund the other quarter of it. Small project cost, it's approximately $18,000. It's in process of being implemented right now. It'll be completed within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. And finally, I just wanted to note, so the charters is on course for an end of October reopening, as has always been intended. And the district did explore all possible shortcuts. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Over the summer as well, Mr. Carter and his team worked with our contractors and consultants on the project and identified the option to open it to a single lane. Unfortunately, I mean, of course, technically anything is possible. I've read some of these Facebook comments. I appreciate, yes, technically it's possible. However, the feedback we received from the consultants was it was going to delay the project for approximately 3 weeks. So is that the best use? It's going to cost, well into the 6 figures to do this. There were safety concerns. There was multiple days it was going to have to be closed completely to finish the rest of the work. A lot of this final stages of the work has been subcontracted out. So while it seems straightforward, when you get down to the weeds of it, it was complicated and a little bit out of our control. And so ultimately our main focus has been to get this project done on time and getting it delayed, risk weather delays, any other delays. So that is not the path that we chose at this time. Obviously council can provide us different direction, but the consultants and recommendation was to stay the course and put all our efforts into trying to get this project completed earlier, if at all possible, versus delaying it to have it opened up partially.
Thank you for your work and your answers.
Okay, thank you. So at this note, it'll be that council receive the report of the CAO for information, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8 now is public question and comment period. So I'd like to invite members of the public forward to speak. If you could please turn on the microphone and provide us with your full name, the local government where you live. We do not require your home address. And we'll have 2 minutes. We'll start timing when you start speaking. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Britt Santowski and I live in Sooke. I'm here to address 3 things, but they all kind of speak to the same thing. 10.4, the engagement on traffic concerns. 10.7, the public participation policy that is being introduced. And 14.1, the traffic surveys that Councillor Bateman put forward. On that one, thank you for considering the information that I submitted. On the other 2, I've done engagement. You all know I did Sooke Pocket News at the time where the population was 13,000 in Sooke, and at its peak, the paper would receive 4,000 to 6,000 hits a day. Okay. Engagement means going to where the people are. This is in the public participation policy. I commend that initiative. And it has a lot of we will blah, blah, blah in it. What's missing for me is the by. We will do this. We will achieve this by. I don't know how the procedures are here. So this is just food for thought. You need to have measurables in there. The old days where we could turn to newspapers and have kind of a single gathering point, a single mental gathering point. Those days are done. We now live in social media and echo chambers. And in order for Sooke to engage with its population, you need to go to where the people are. I appreciate the toxicity that's there. I appreciate that you don't want to put staff out or yourselves out as a target because the vitriol is horrifying. Go to where the people are. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name's Helen. I live in Sooke. Couple of items. Agenda 9.2 Code of Conduct. Really happy that policies are always being improved there to ensure public participation. So that's wonderful. Agenda item 10.1 Community Works. I thought that was really cool. There's a stream of money coming in that can be used for recreational facilities, tourism, cultural, maybe even a town center plan, which was the top priority of our yet to be adopted OCP. Regarding 10.3, the transportation plan, I really appreciate staff's work on the report, and I do sympathize with all the nastiness that has been on social media. And I just want you to know that those comments don't speak for most of us. I really was concerned about the pre-selected joint traffic committee, but it seems there's a more kind of diverse and democratic process that's going to be followed. So I'm glad that's happening. Regarding the community garden 10.3, I'm sad about the lack of space for community gardens, but it does show you how much people love their parks. Neighborhoods are fiercely protective of their green space. To quote the staff report, residents expressed a value on public open space, and I hope you'll please remember this. Regarding the Ravens Ridge Park, item 10.5, I think it's cool that we're spending $600,000 for expanded infrastructure and landscaping for Ravens Ridge Park. Sun River will soon have a $2 million pedestrian bridge so people can walk and bike into town. And I think it's fabulous that there's so many parks and recreation opportunities for families in that neighborhood. I wish every neighborhood in Sooke had as many parks and hope a green space equity lens will be applied for other neighborhoods and their families. Regarding Maple Avenue 11.1, I'm happy to see our Parks Department is making community trails and green space expanded at every opportunity. And I wanted to know whether I could bring forward a procedural question about 11.3 Murray Road.
A procedural question?
My apologies. Can I get the question?
She would like to ask a procedural question regarding 11.3. I'm with a group called Friends of Sooke Parks. We had reached out to you earlier in, I believe, June to say that we were a little confused because it appeared that there's no development permit with this rezoning package. It's simply an OCP amendment and a rezoning request, but no development permit has been submitted. So we were curious, if that's the case, then we should be talking about whether or not P1 land should be rezoned to C2. And that zoning, that decision should not include a proposal that has not been put forward. So you should be looking at C2 as all the lands, all the different opportunities that might be put forward. Am I explaining myself? Okay, I think so. I'll have our staff member answer that as part of the report when it comes forward later.
Okay, appreciate that.
But typically development permits follow a zoning.
Correct,
approved
but this
zoning.
time it seems to be embedded. There's a lot of information in there that should be part of a development permit, not the question in front of us currently. The only thing that is in front of council is whether or not the OCP should be amended and whether this land should be zoned C2.
Okay. I see your point. Just council tends to like visuals, so we understand what we're looking at, their concepts.
Right, but usually
Yeah.
put concepts through when you do a development permit. Right now, we have no guarantee. If you go forward rezoning, no development permit, there's no guarantee.
Yeah, noted. Okay, thank you. Other speakers tonight?
Herb Haldane, Sooke. The reason I'm here is the traffic issue. I get you've got your plans ready and you've got a bunch of different stuff in play. And I do understand what the CEO was talking about with, trying to be patient and whatnot. There was 3,500 people that filled out a survey, basically for our group. I was part of a traffic committee. We had a bunch of us get together, including the chamber, some people from the Sooke Builders Association, and some people from the general public, and including a couple of counselors who came and sat in on the meetings and so on. And we came up with a bunch of ideas. But I think the biggest thing we're missing here is all those ideas that we came up with on the fly, the last minute, should have been implemented into a transportation plan years ago anyway. So when you do a transportation plan, you want to do all these big road changes to Sooke and basically shut down traffic so that we have this issue we have right now. So there should be these other situations where they're implemented in there for these things that we're trying to do at the last minute. So there should have been other turnoffs, other roads, other places that we could have moved on to. So we shouldn't be trying to do this at the last minute. And I think that should have been part of the transportation plan. But again, it was done during COVID, so there wasn't a lot of public input and there wasn't a lot of people who were going to use that document that got to say anything in there. 3,500 people who signed the petition saying they're being put out were people that were going through hardships with the daycare, hardships with parents that needed their help, hardships because they were trying to get home to other considerations and other responsibilities that they had going on. We can't overlook this stuff. That's still 10% of the voting population in Sooke. So your alternative approval process uses the same setup. So that's almost an alternative approval process situation. We need to do more. We're not doing enough. I get that you coming up with this be patient kind of thing, but that's patronizing to a lot of people who are sitting in the traffic for time and time again, day after day. And I'm not happy with the results, but there's nothing I can do about it. We have to be patient. We don't have a choice. I wish I had more time because I have a lot more to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers tonight?
Good evening. My name is Mike Kozakowski. I too, as Mr. Haldane, am part of the Community Traffic Committee with the Chamber and the Sooke Builders Association and members of the public. I have a comment / question. One of the suggestions that we made was to allow a secondary access to Evergreen Shopping Center, which is the primary retail plaza in the Sooke district. In the past, my clients and as I've heard through other development applications, have been asked to provide secondary access via private land to assist with egress to the site and better access during heavy traffic periods. One of the suggestions from the response via the consultants that were hired by the District of Sooke was that the secondary access would not be beneficial. And so we're a little curious as to why this has been requested via private land, but would not be beneficial via Lot A, while we think that it probably would help quite a bit. I know from my own personal experiences, it can get pretty busy come peak times into and out of Evergreen Center. And I just can't imagine a scenario where it would not be helpful to have an additional point of access, preferably via Wadhams Road, which is turning into a fairly high profile road in the district. One of the points I also wanted to make was we have engaged with the owner of the retail plaza. And so there is some momentum building there. And we are hopeful that they are in agreement with us to allow this additional access. So we would like to perhaps have the district looked into a traffic count or something of that nature, which we don't think has been undertaken, to better understand exactly why this additional access point would not be beneficial. Now, the recommendation was a parking lot in Lot A as opposed to access, but if we're building a parking lot, we might as well just add a little bit more road connectivity and then have access as opposed to parking lot. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that away. Other speakers?
Thank you. My name is Philip Buchanan. I'm with J.E. Anderson and Associates, and I'm speaking on behalf of a group of developers at Silver Spray Drive. Council or members of council expressed an interest on what sort of vision the development group had for the roads within Silver Spray Drive. They're currently within the road standards set up as suburban standards, which is curb, gutter, streetlights. It's quite urban and not rural. And I know the group prefers a rural standard. We did send in a section of that road, general concept to staff. We hope it'll be considered. Now, I saw on the agenda tonight that the gateway area of Sooke is probably moving towards a rural standard for road as opposed to an urban. And that the additional rural cross-section might be appropriate for the gateway area. I believe it would be helpful if Silver Street Drive was considered for the same standard. In other words, to shift that suburban standard for Silver Street Drive to a rural standard within the subdivision development services bylaw. So I suppose that's the summary is, please consider taking Silver Spray Drive and moving it to a rural standard, and consider the local rural standard that's proposed for the gateway area. Okay, maybe piggyback it along with the gateway group, gateway area. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's all part of 10.3, so we can take that into consideration then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Other speakers tonight?
Levi Megenberg, Sooke. This is referring to section 10.5, the Sooke Community Gardens project. So first of all, just really wanted to thank Sooke Council and Sooke staff for all your support on this vital initiative to date. Although we were sad to see the mixed results from the public engagement process in terms of those two pilot locations, I just did want to say that we are supportive of staff's recommendation in this particular topic. I will say, even though it isn't perhaps the positive outcome that we had hoped for, we did learn a number of really important things through the process. The first, I personally talked to over 100 people when we were knocking on doors around those neighborhoods. Every single person I talked to was in strong support of more community garden space within Sooke. And it really just came down to where should that be located and where suitable. The second piece was just how important parking is for residents within the Sooke area, in particular in a number of the suburban areas. So moving forward, when we're looking at additional community garden space, we ranked it pretty highly. We clearly need to rank it even more highly if we want to find a supportable long-term additional community garden location. And with that, I just wanted to reiterate our hope that through the master planning process for the John Phillips Memorial Park, we can continue to consider community gardens. 60 to 80% of the people we talk to seem to say, hey, this place isn't great. What about John Phillips Memorial Park? So there's parking there. It could be a good option. Most people we talk to seem to be their preferred location within Sooke when we actually posed the question, where would make sense for another community garden. So thanks again so much to council and staff for your support on this, and look forward to continuing to work together to find the next permanent community garden spot in Sooke moving forward. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you very much for that feedback. Other speakers this evening? I'm just curious, to folks that are seated, are there any empty chairs we have a few folks, okay. For the folks standing out in the foyer, there are some empty chairs inside if you would like to come in. Yeah, I just over in the corner here. Okay. There's a few in the back corner there if you like. Oh, there's two in the front as well. 3 in the front. Okay. Thank you. If you could turn on the microphone, sir, before you speak, please go ahead. Thank you.
Scott Kendrew, 3031 Phillips Road. I'm here to talk about the proposal for the rural local, not rural connector that you proposed for Phillips Road. I don't know where the connector to Phillips Road would be. I understand it would work up to Sun River, but the rest of it where we are, it's all septic tanks and wells. And I don't think many of the neighbors would like to have a 20-foot wide road put in for them. And I would just like you to look at that to see if you can change that. I see it applying to Sun River, but we're another half mile north of that. So I'd appreciate if you'd look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrew. I'll follow up with staff when the report comes forward in a little bit. Thank you. Other speakers this evening? There's 3 seats in the front. No takers? Okay. Okay, it's hot. Any other speakers for the final time tonight? Everyone's good? Oh.
Hi, Noah Dallius from Sooke. I'd just like to speak in favor of the proposal for 11.3 for Murray Road.
Okay, so you may not have been here in my opening
I
remarks. but-
wasn't.
Okay, so this will have a dedicated public hearing where we will welcome all views should it advance to that. So
That's gonna
unfortunately.
be way
tonight,
later, eh?
This is the one item where you cannot speak on, but thank you
Okay.
for coming forward.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Okay. So is everyone who would like to speak, everyone's good? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your comments today. Okay, so council will carry on here and move on to item 9, which is our consent agenda. The recommendation would be that the following items on the consent agenda be adopted by consent. 9.1 mayoral proclamation, 9.2 council code of conduct bylaw, 9.3 the correspondence. Move the consent by Councillor Beto, seconded by St. Pierre. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So that takes care of those items. We've just voted, so those are all adopted.
Okay, then I will make it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're moving on to item 10 into reports. The first one up is 10.1, the Community Works Fund Agreement 2024 to 2034.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, this report is related to the renewed Canada Community Building Fund, or CCBF. In July this year, UBCM, the province of BC, and the federal government announced that a new agreement had been signed to renew the delivery of the CCBF for the next decade. The CCBF has 3 funding streams, of which the Community Works Fund, formerly known as the gas tax, is a long-standing program which provides each local government in BC with an annual base amount and per capita allocation. In order to receive the first payment under the renewed program, the District of Sooke must enter into agreement with UBCM. By signing the agreement, we will receive Community Works Fund payment of $750,000 to $780,000 per year for the next 5 years. Staff recommend that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to sign the Community Works Fund Agreement 2024 to 2034 on behalf of the District of Sooke. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a question, if I could be reminded on what we had received in years before.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, we received 657,000 and change in 2023. And we received 630,000 in 2022.
Okay, the other question, and I didn't quite read this in the agreement, is this indexed to CPI or census data?
This is indexed to census, to population.
Well, that's good news. Okay,
Yeah.
so just for members of the public, when we first received it, this program started, I believe, back in 2005, and it was determined on our census population at that time. And then there was an adjustment where it increased with CPI, but not in census. So it's a welcome to receive the additional funding. The total pot increased from 2 billion to 3.5 for the entire province, but there's also the grant allocation and a significant portion to Metro, of course, where the bulk of population is, but that saves us about 1% in taxes every year. So we'll go with that. Okay. So the recommendation has been read out. So I'll look for a mover, please, a question. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
So I was curious through you to our CAO, do we have these funds earmarked in the 5-year plan?
Yes, definitely. And I don't have the financial plan in front of me, of course, today, but yeah, in the capital funding, that's where the majority of these funds get allocated every year. I don't know off the top of my head what they're dedicated to for this fiscal year, but in the back of the financial plan book, there'll be the reconciliation of those. And that's typically what those have been used for. Lots roads projects have been a heavy use of that, whether it's been the annual paving program or other projects that have come up is what the funding is being used for. And then every year we have to do an annual report by the end of June to report back on what that funding has been used for.
All right, thank you.
In 1 year, it went to the all-weather field replacement or the installation of the all-weather field of 600,000 or so. Okay, so it's moved and seconded. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next going up is 10.2, 5220-5222, Sooke Road Residential Strata Conversion.
Thank you. This application is in relation to a residential strata conversion for the property located at 5220-5222 Sooke Road. Oh, sorry, I need the clicker. The presentation and clicker, please.
My apologies, just a technical difficulty. We'll be right back.
Just for those arriving, there's 5 empty chairs in the front row if you like. Okay, thank you, staff. We got our PowerPoint up.
Okay. Thank you. So again, this is an application in relation to a residential strata conversion for the property located at 5222 Sooke Road. The subject property is a 2.2 hectare parcel accessed directly from Highway 14. The property contains 2 detached dwellings and a shared driveway. Each dwelling is currently serviced by private wells and septic systems. The current zoning of the property is RU2. The RU2 zone is unique in that it allows for multiple single-family dwellings per parcel, depending on lot size. For example, properties like this one between 0.8 and 3.99 hectares are permitted up to 3 single-family dwellings. The owners of the subject property had previously applied for residential strata conversion to stratify the 2 existing single-family dwellings on the property. On September 28th, 2020, council granted approval in principle with conditions. While the process of working with staff to while within the process of working with staff to satisfy those conditions, the approval in principle had expired. The applicant is therefore requesting a 1-year extension to satisfy the remaining conditions. District Policy 8.6 designates council as the approving authority to consider applications to stratify previously occupied single-family and duplex dwellings. These applications are first given approval in principle, which establishes conditions that must be satisfied prior to final approval of the strata conversion. Conditions generally include upgrading dwelling or related services to current bylaw standards and legislative requirements. Approval in principle is valid for 1 year. Any related conditions must be satisfied prior to final approval of the strata conversion. The conditions of strata conversion established in September 2020 included confirmation that the on-site septic and water system complies with current municipal and legislative requirements. 2, that the owner legalized their Highway 14 access, and to confirm that the existing dwellings were compliant with BC Building Code regulations. To address the first condition related to the private water system, a well assessment report was conducted in April of 2021. The report determined that the 2 on-site wells did not meet the required 2,500 liters per day yields required by the SDS bylaw, or the Subdivision and Development Standards bylaw. A subsequent report was provided in June 2023 from the same engineer recommending an alternate solution to meet equivalent water yields by installing water storage tanks to supplement the existing systems for the proposed strata lots 1 and 2. This alternative solution was determined to require a variance. Therefore, on July 8th, 2024, council authorized issuance of the development variance permit to permit an alternative solution to meet the bylaw standard as recommended by the well assessment reports, subject to the registration of a Section 219 covenant as a condition of final strata plan approval. The first condition also required confirmation that the septic system for the proposed strata units comply with current municipal and legislative requirements. Staff received confirmation from Vancouver Island Health Authority that the existing septic system meets their requirements for on-site sanitary disposal. Therefore, this condition has been satisfied. The second condition required the applicant to address the referral comments from the Ministry of Transportation. This included that the owners legalize the existing driveway access from Highway 14. Staff confirmed that this condition has also been satisfied. Regarding condition number 3, the applicant was required to confirm the existing dwellings complied with the relevant BC Building Code requirements. The District Building Department has concluded the 2 existing dwellings were constructed under the appropriate permit process and that a code compliance report was not required. As a result, this condition has also been satisfied. In summary, the following are the outstanding conditions of strata conversion as outlined in attachment 6 of this report, which include the installation of the water tanks to supplement the existing private water system and associated recommendations from the well assessment reports, and the registration of a Section 219 covenant to ensure that the use of the property is consistent with those recommendations and report. Therefore, staff recommend that council grant a 1-year extension of approval in principle for the proposed residential strata conversion and authorize the mayor to sign the final strata plan once the applicant has satisfied the conditions of approval as outlined again in attachment 6 of the report. This concludes my presentation. I understand the applicant is in attendance and available for questions if you have any direct. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask council if you have any questions of staff. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Very briefly, I know the council recently afforded more delegated powers to the Director of Planning.
I guess this doesn't qualify as a minor variance, does it? Even though council's more or less already approved the use of the tanks and so on and so forth, and obviously would be in favor. And I just want to clarify, this is not a minor variance, is it?
Through the mayor, no, the variance has already been approved at a previous council meeting. We do not have the ability at this time to approve minor variances under the existing bylaws.
Thank you.
Anything from anyone else? Okay, so the recommendation is that council allow for a 1-year extension of an approval in principle for the residential strata conversion for the property legally described as Lot A, Section 68, Sooke District Plan VIP 52056 5220-/5222 Sooke Road, and that council authorize the mayor to sign the strata plan for final approval once the owner has satisfied the conditions of approval outlined in Schedule A, Attachment 6. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any comments from you, Councillor Lajeunesse? No. Councillor Bateman.
I got a quick comment, and this relates to the water tanks. And I did go back and look at the Active Earth Engineering Consultants report and its solution to ensure enough water on these two lots, 2,500 liters per day, was to bring in a potable water delivery service. And what I didn't see in the report was any reference at all to rainwater collection and harvesting systems. And I just make that comment as a something we in the district should be looking at in future. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we'll move on to 10.3, Transportation Master Plan Workshop Action Items.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on May 21st, there was a workshop held with our consultants that put together our transportation master plan, as well as council and staff at a committee of the whole meeting. We were directed by council to report back on what we heard, as well as to provide recommendations on the next steps to address all the items we heard at the meeting. There's a lot included in this report. If I could, the corporate officers pulled up the resolutions, and I'll allude to the resolutions as I go through a brief summary best I can. Ultimately, some of the things we heard through the workshop were frontage improvement exemptions, considerations for residential strata title conversions, as well as frontage improvement exemption considerations for building permit, as well as that subdivision, what are required under the Local Government Act. Staff are in the process of looking at these exemptions. They are draft format right now in our subdivision development standards bylaw. That's been a process of developing that bylaw over the last 6 months. It's with review with our legal right now. That bylaw will then this fall winter come forward for council for consideration for first 3 readings. Following council's approval of first few readings, it will be then brought to the development community as well as public consultation on this bylaw. This is a very important bylaw. It sets framework for all developer infrastructure requirements that are put forward as requirements when they develop. So they're captured by developers and not 100% by taxpayers. So very important bylaw. It's in the final stages right now. That will be brought forward for council consideration going forward this fall, winter. A big piece that council was also looking for were framework for cash in lieu contributions. A lot of times frontage improvements in the majority of Sooke in the suburban area, they're required for spot development. So we're getting frontage improvements where pieces of sidewalk are built in the middle of nowhere. They're not connected in unity to other areas. So part of this report, we're asking for council's direction to bring forward a draft frontage works program. These are very unique programs that have been put forward in a few municipalities. City of Coquitlam has done it. City of Richmond has done it, as well as Kelowna. We've analyzed each of these areas, and staff are ready to bring forward a comprehensive frontage work program for the district of Sooke. What this does is it takes the majority of Sooke in the suburban area. It identifies this as a developable area. It provides unity on a cash in lieu contribution that would be required, and it would be the option of developers to sign up voluntarily for this. They could basically volunteer to participate in the program as opposed to constructing their frontage works. If they volunteer in this program, there will be a cost savings for the developer because it's based on economies of scale and large project value costs that the district can construct. These funds would then be put into a reserve bank. The district could then utilize these funds to fulfill complete street projects. So avoid things being built in pockets and basically build out complete street networks at a lower cost. So there's incentive for the developers to save a bit of money, as well as unity provided for council, putting these imposition and requirements on developers. It's not once off a hardship, it's equal all across the board. So we're really excited about that. The frontage improvement program, our recommendation as presented is for council to direct staff to bring forward this program in unison with our subdivision and development standards bylaw. Other items we've heard through the workshop through council was to look at traffic calming and speed reduction measures, review complete street cross sections and boundaries of applicable areas, and review the status of major TMP capital projects. All of this is in the recommendation to be captured at a midpoint review next spring, summer of our transportation master plan. This report brings forward one recommendation that has one minor amendment. It is one that was brought forward in our previous report. It's in relation to the Gatewood or Gateway residential area. And this is in alignment with variances that we've seen approved and granted that provide more of a rural context to this area. So staff are again bringing forward this recommendation for council's consideration to basically amend the service level area for the Gateway residential from a suburban level of service to a rural level of service, as well as to introduce one more rural cross section that will give developers an opportunity of a hybrid or picking one section or the other. They're both aligned with what we've seen for variance in that area, and it makes sense. So in summary, there's that one recommendation that will amend one service level area. It will add one rural cross section, and we would be bringing this forward in unison with the subdivision and development standard bylaw, as well as a road frontage program. Going forward, we're hoping that these two bylaws, or the bylaw and the program, can be put forward for council's consideration this fall, winter. Following adoption of the bylaw, we're recommending to do a full midpoint review of the TMP so we can see if there's any further adjustments that council would like considered, and we can have those implemented in the TMP following that review and very easily have that updated into our new subdivision and development standard bylaw. There is a lot of information in this report. A lot of it follows action items to basically fulfill all these requirements that were identified in the workshop, and it puts a time frame to these requirements and programs rolling out. For council's consideration, like I said, lots of information here. I'm happy to answer any questions to provide clarification on any things I've discussed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carter. Just from members of the public and what they brought forward. So one question to answer is how this could be applied to Sooke Point for the Silver Spray Drive. And then the other was in regard to Phillips Road and where that standard would be and where it would stop per Mr. Kender's ask earlier.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through your worship to council. So in terms of the Silver Spray Drive, that would be something that I've conveyed to J.E. Anderson would be considered and part of our midpoint review recommended in this report to happen next spring, summer. That would be looking at any other service area levels that council desired to drop, change, as well as road cross section areas. That was not considered in this report tonight. That was initially brought forward as a recommendation in my previous report because it's been in alignment with variances that have been realized out there. But staff still strongly believe that this area is going to realize a lot of development. Some of the variances that have been approved out there have been less of a standard than a rural cross section. It's in alignment with what has been presented to me from Mr. Buchanan at J. Anderson, and I've conveyed to him that this should be considered in our TMP midpoint review. And if it's something that council desires changed at that time, staff can go forward with making those changes. But right now, we are not bringing forward that recommendation. We believe that still should be developed out, Silver Spray Drive, to a suburban standard. Unless it's completely desired to change it to a rural level of service. The cross section Mr. Buchanan has brought forward does not even meet our rural level of service standard. So I really wanted that collectively reviewed by council as well as the public in a TMP midpoint review before any changes got considered for that area. In terms of the Phillips Road question that was presented from the public tonight. So Phillips Road arterial upgrades are being designed right now, and that goes from basically the highway to the north side of Sea Park, where there's a 4-leg roundabout being designed right now, as well as a connector that connects basically Phillips Road all the way to Throop Road, just at the back of Charters near the ball field and the golf course. The improvements are not going all the way up Phillips Road, so they would be stopping pretty much up to the bridge. Everything from north of the bridge going up Phillips would remain the same, and improvements would lead up to the north side of Sea Park and just up to the south approach of the bridge at Sooke River.
Okay, so for Mr. Kendrew, who asked earlier, it doesn't apply in that area at all. They would just be as it is today. Okay, thank you. Councillor Beddoes, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just, to your worship staff, I'm glad to see we get some common sense solutions there. We've been batting around some of those sidewalk issues for some time. Sidewalks that start nowhere and end nowhere. And this way it allows us to put some sidewalks where they're desperately needed. So I commend staff on that. Thank you very much for that report. And I look forward to dealing in detail with some of these other issues. So thanks again.
Other queries from members of council? No? Okay. So I'll read this out here. The recommendations are that council direct staff to prepare a draft frontage works program for council consideration in unison with the draft subdivision and development standards bylaw, that council direct staff to bring forward a report to the committee of the whole in regard to potential amendments to policy 8.6 residential strata title conversion 2010 related to conditions for surface frontage works, that council direct staff adjust the service area boundary to change the gateway residential area from a suburban level of service to a rural level of service in drafting the subdivision and development standards bylaw, and that council directs staff to implement an additional rural local road cross-section configuration in drafting the subdivision and development standards bylaw, and that council directs staff to consider a 2025 midpoint review of the transportation master plan and related scope during 2025 budget deliberations. It's moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
I just like to repeat some what Councillor Beddoes was saying. Many thanks to the staff. I feel like council and the public's questions and input in terms of the workshop were really well received and well implemented. Really looking forward to seeing what this is all going to turn out to be, especially the works program. I think I'm with Councillor Beddoes on that in a big way. I feel like staff has really stepped up, gone to find the models, done the work, done the heavy lifting. Thank you so much.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, no, I've said my piece. Again, thanks staff. I think we're on the right track here and I look forward to it coming forward.
Anything else from members of council? No. No. I'll just thank you. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Well, that was just the thumbs up. And thank you. Because we certainly did struggle with the frontage improvements. And so this road frontage works program is a wonderful initiative. Thank you for jumping in and exploring that. And the transportation master plan, of course, does call in the action plan for a 5-year review. So good, we're on it and great work. Thanks.
That was great timing. Perhaps at the midpoint review, there was a long list in that plan, which you likely just took and had started working on. It would be great if you could just to assign the dollar values, assign that we've spent so far, where we've been successful in grants, just so we can show where the development contributions are going, where the grant opportunities have been successful and where taxpayer contributions have gone and what that all adds up to. It's been considerable amount of work, but there's a lot to do. So we often just focus on the next project. So it would be good just to see the investment into infrastructure that has taken place since that plan was adopted. Thank you very much, staff. So I'll call the question. All in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, well, that takes us to 10.4, options for engagement on Sooke traffic concerns.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since our meeting on July 8th, in the context of the previous council discussion on this item. Two of the key action items we've taken include CAO Gray attending the Community-Based Transportation Committee. I should also note that she's continuing to work with them. We've also contracted an engineer and traffic firm to assess options not covered in the Transportation Master Plan, hoping to prioritize any item that will have the biggest impact, as you heard earlier tonight. We've provided some preliminary reporting on these items to the community through our website, media, and our e-newsletter, which is issued to approximately 800 subscribers, with a more fulsome information coming at the next meeting, again, as you heard earlier. Not to repeat much of the staff report, I would like to highlight some of the impact on the budget engagement, which extended this year to include receiving input on traffic solutions. So far, we've connected with approximately 900 residents through our pop-ups, collected nearly 300 surveys, and are receiving responses from 200 households in a randomized survey currently. I'm in the process of consolidating the findings from this engagement and will report back to council and the community at the November COW. Well, I think we've done a lot with the resources that we have. We are a staff office of one in the case of communications. We do have the ability to, we can always do more specific to communications and engagement on traffic concerns. Recognizing this topic as a priority, staff are offering additional communications and engagement strategies related to transportation for your consideration, should you wish to vary the current service level. Such options include more support for local businesses and creating an online traffic reporting portal. There are additional considerations that you may wish to consider. However, a further suite, we would recommend those are considered alongside the 2025 budget deliberations, as they have greater resource implications. However, communication and engagement specific to transportation is only one aspect of the staff report before you. And so with that, I will hand it over to our corporate officer to discuss the possibility of a committee of council.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, as you are aware, this report results out of a referral to staff in regards to a potential Sooke traffic committee. My counterpart provided the options outlined for enhanced public engagement and the options in relation to that. And the second portion of this staff report is outlining the potential for a select committee, including a draft terms of reference for council's consideration. This did not formulate the staff recommendation. The staff recommendation is for the enhanced community engagement initiatives, but for council's information as requested, that has also been included in the staff report. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. What may also be helpful going forward is we have done a lot of work connecting with schools and PACs and hearing a lot about the volume of children that are choosing to walk to school instead of being driven. Those are fewer cars on the road, and I think that's a big win to have our children using our trail network. They, of course, don't drive and depend heavily on our trail network. And so I know that in the previous discussion, we talked a lot about the transportation plan. It would also be good to highlight the work done in our parks and trails plan, the number of trails that have been safely constructed and the user groups that are on these trails and that are choosing alternatives to driving. The demographic without a license needs to get around safely as well. And those are fewer cars and fewer people being shuttled around. And also we'll see what I can do with transit just to see where we're seeing more uptake in transit use as the system comes back online as well, because it's another one in moving numbers of people in and out and around the community. So I'll leave it at that and turn to members of council. Councillor St. Pierre.
I'd like to follow up on some of the comments that our mayor just made. A lot of my best information about transportation in the community in terms of very short-term improvements are actually around young people and keeping them safe as they actually try and travel trails and roads where they have no choice but to take a bike, where they try and take a bus, but the bus doesn't actually go where they want to go. So I strongly recommend that as we move forward in whatever way, that we actively engage with young people. And when I say young people, anyone who's basically not in the privilege of having a car and needs to get around, because these are the people that are actually going to be better served by smaller investments that will make a huge amount of difference. We don't seem to have a lot of data on this stuff. I would like to see us moving strongly in the direction of finding out where the cycling bottlenecks are, where people are terrified of getting on a bike because they might die. Making sure that we actually have parking that's undercover for bicycles, even a fraction of the space that's available for cars would make a huge difference. If I want to travel to my doctor, there's nowhere to actually put a bike, which is ridiculous. There's nowhere at there's nowhere at my dentist. Pretty much anywhere I go, and I do use a bike, there's nowhere to actually store my bike safely. I have a bike that's worth $2,000 to $3,000. It's an e-bike. I don't want it ripped off, okay? And I don't want to get rained on either. I'd like to have some of the privileges that are available to cars, just a tiny, tiny bit. And I'd like that to be considered. And so we could find, I noticed one line about it in there. I did see that. But I think more emphasis and specifically reaching out to young people and to the people who are really at risk of it getting run over. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so I see you've given us 4 options here. Where are you? There you are. 4 options. So option 1 is continue current initiatives at status quo, and that clearly is not something we in the district should be doing. We need to up our game. So number 2 is enhance existing initiatives. So that's your staff recommendation. So can you take us through that? I know it's a $10,000 expense. Can you take us through those 4 items, please?
Certainly. So starting with support for local businesses. So something that we heard listening to the community and from the report that is indicated later in the agenda tonight is how we can turn the challenges of the traffic situation into an opportunity. So to offer an example, we did do some, I provided some support to the Sooke Fine Art Show, for example. Unfortunately, the Old Man Will Lake wildfire started that same night. So we weren't able to fully execute that, but it really opened the opportunity of conversations of how we might be able to provide some marketing support to other businesses or some suites that can help with those seasonal campaigns and leverage in an area that we haven't done in collaboration with the great work that the Chamber of Commerce is doing. So that's one example there, just to respond to what options there are to shop locally, creating an online portal for traffic related reporting. So recognizing it as a hot topic, for lack of better words, having both that mechanism to triage solutions from the community and really use that hive mind, but the follow-up to report out on as those solutions are evaluated or explored. So that dedicated page to respond in that capacity and provide greater transparency in our communication specific to the topic of traffic congestion, transportation solutions, to Councillor St. Pierre's point, that our transportation system is not simply vehicles, but also multimodal modes of transportation. Connecting with local schools and organizations on traffic solutions. This is, Mayor Tate spoke to this a little bit, but doing more of what we started with the pilot project at Poirier, some really powerful stories were heard. We launched the active school routes and meeting spots. And there's some interesting testimonials for people who started using those locations rather than driving their children directly to the school, which was the previous habit they had. One significant story was saving 20 minutes in the morning. I'm a parent. I know that mornings are very busy. 20 minutes is a remarkable gift of time. So doing more of that. So expanding what we are doing currently, but just in a bigger fashion. And then the 4th one is developing and promoting carpool applications. So there are lots out there, absolutely. But something that's led by the district and providing more of a local resources to connect community members to carpool. I've also reached out to Modi as far as some of their rideshare options and promotions on Highway 14, if there's any signage solutions and other alternatives that we can do there. But just that would be another arguably short-term option specific to communications and engagement that might be a tool for the community to help us lessen some of the traffic woes and volumes. I know it's not as immediate as everybody's hoping, or there's not a magic bullet to teleport us from one point to the next. And I certainly appreciate that as people hit the new, as they're called, the new 4 lanes on Highway 14, that this is perhaps the 3rd or 4th sort of bottleneck of traffic that they've experienced on their commute just as they're approaching home. And it's not ideal. So if we can each do a little bit, maybe the combined efforts will result in a lot. Sorry, just one last comment, for a relative nominal cost of roughly $10,000.
Right. And you have the capacity at the moment to take on these things. Just.
Through your worship, thank you for asking that question. It would come with a trade-off. More specifically, again, as I mentioned, I'm a staff office of one. So there is a bit of a trade-off to take on some of these new initiatives. But they're clearly needed in the community. So such trade-offs might be different delays in response times on my end as things queue from my desk, delays on the website, revisions and projects are just some examples. So if that's a trade-off that is supported by council, I am absolutely happy to take that on.
Wonderful in item B that you're going to collect community input. Now, of course, things like Ms. Santowski's survey captures an immense amount of community input, and social media daily, there are suggestions and solutions and harsh words for those of us at this table. But at the same time, would there be a contract funding where you could hire someone within the community to be an effective portal for us?
It's something that we can certainly explore as to the specific mechanism as to how that's preferred. Like you said, there's a lot of data that's been collected from the community. We also have a lot of data coming in through our budget survey, as I mentioned earlier as well, with several solutions. So we do need to review that. And I think two comments made earlier, it's important to have that feedback loop on, they've provided with comments, but what are we doing with that information? And why or why not are we taking action specific to all the different ideas that we've heard?
Okay, I'll just carry on just briefly here. So, not briefly, probably. So that one's a pretty doable option 2. Option 3 takes us into a new realm of 2025 budgeted initiatives. And option 4 is the establishment of the committee. So I'm just curious, there's partnering with BC Transit to promote public transportation, public awareness campaigns, traffic simulations to visualize the impact of proposed changes. And I was particularly curious about the traffic dashboard, which would provide, based on the Colwood model, to provide real-time traffic data updates. Daily updates, where if I'm heading back home, I can quickly find a spot to find out, okay, now's not the time. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. That was one indication that would likely be aside for next year's budget, because there would be a separate ask, not just from the staff resource side, but also from the technology infrastructure side. And I have not sought out the specific quotes for some of that work, given the current capacity restraints. But if that is something that council wishes I explore, I'm certainly happy to do so.
If I may though, Councillor Bateman, you could find that on Google Maps right now. It won't give you the historical time, but if you were to, let's say you were at the West Shore Mall and you put in your home address, it'll show you the route and it'll show you where the congestion point is and what the plus time is from the norm. So it'll say plus 12 minutes in this area. So that is available, though I realize it's only available to anyone that uses an iPhone device. But if you were to do a traffic portal, you would still need a device to log into that site. So that's where I think in some cases, people might turn into CFAX for the half an hour radio updates as callers are calling in safely to the radio to report bottlenecks every half an hour. They're providing the traffic updates because you couldn't use your smartphone to do that while you're driving or you'll face a ticket. So that is something. Just one thought was, the sign that's at the first 4 lanes that Ministry of Transportation installed, there's the big lit up sign. My understanding when that was in was that they would display any traffic events on that sign. So they would get what's available through the either the traffic cam data or accident data, and then that sign would be updated. So it would say accident at Woodlands. but it never seems to do that. It just says, you know, we're report wildfire, it's fawning season, like those are great messages, but it's not actually doing anything to indicate anything to do with the traffic conditions, like put on snow tires. Like these are all things that we know. So I'm just wondering, in the conversation with the ministry, could we ask that maybe be looked at? It's the same as when you go to the ferry, it'll say this ferry's full or whatever. So then maybe as folks are coming out this way, road closed at Woodlands, you may decide to turn around at that point and go back, as opposed to actually sitting in it and then going, what is going on? That might, if you're coming in from town to see that. So I know it's controlled by the highways, it's a Drive BC, but I thought that was the intention of it. It's not really providing anything relevant on traffic for us right now.
Control.
I guess so. So what do we need to do to do something, I guess would be the question. But if we could find out more about that, that might help.
Received and I'll follow up.
Okay, the other one, just on Councillor St. Pierre's point about active transportation, is I have heard from some residents that the barrier to cycling sometimes is the frequency of street sweeping. The highway, the shoulders are just cluttered with debris, so it's unsafe making cyclists go into the travel lane. So just a takeaway as we set service levels is to advance the street sweeping earlier in the year, maybe more frequently, and to look at that as a possibility so that those roads become safer to use sooner. Because I know that's sort of some feedback I've heard in recent while. Okay. Anything else from anyone? Any questions? Are you asking a question? Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. So on screen, we have recommendations, and then we have further recommendations in the report. The Joint Traffic Committee establishment, I think, is a great idea to inform further updates to the Transportation Master Plan. If we can get some local input into the Transportation Master Plan with some kind of on the ground knowledge of what's been done in the past and what has failed to have been done. Because we've had transportation master plans over the years that the implementation never happened with the previous plans. And I appreciate that implementation is happening now, but there were some other items in previous transportation master plans. Had they been implemented, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now, because I think we talk about Highway 14 and the congestion on Highway 14, but it is a direct result of the fact that traffic has no means to disperse once it comes across the bridge. And so I think having a joint traffic committee to help inform the transportation master plan as updates are occurring would be useful.
If I'm not mistaken though, Mr. Carter, in your previous, that when the draft is done, you're going to be taking it out to the community, to various stakeholders for input. Is that not the case? Can you remind us of that?
Sorry, just for clarification, the transportation master plan or the 7 solutions that were presented to the
The
district?
transportation master plan at the midpoint review.
Midpoint review, that will be brought to council for a midpoint review, and if amendments are desired by council, then it goes through a public consultation to amend that plan.
Okay, so in terms of getting other feedback from other stakeholders, how would that happen?
So what I can say about the transportation master plan is that it is the most current compared to any of the transportation master plans that have been done in the past. It has been created by a very competent consultant at Urban Systems. I have analyzed this plan in detail for the last 4 years since I've been at the district, and it was adopted shortly after I've gotten here. It has been analyzed nonstop, as well as every potential solution, looking at those by Watts Traffic Engineering, which are one of the top traffic engineering consultants in BC, as well as any of our design consultants that have been working on the transportation master plan implementation components, which are also some of the largest consultants in BC with a lot of knowledge and a lot of resources behind them. Includes McElhaney, Stantec, Associated Engineering, and a lot of the biggest ones. In terms of our transportation master plan, council, I commend for what they have supported over the last 4 years. We have designed almost 90% of this plan. The focus with staff and what we brought forward to council was implementing the arteries before the heart gets put in. The heart will fix the problem. The heart is a very expensive problem. It's basically creating a bypass, like Councillor Lajeunesse has alluded to, which basically disperses traffic in Sooke prior to getting to the town center. That bypass is designed at Phillips Road to upgrade that to an arterial road. It's also a very busy road with the museum, with a lot of public facilities. So major upgrades need to be done to that road, not only to facilitate the traffic it's going to see, but to be able to accommodate safe pedestrian and active transportation travel. That road is designed right now. We are in a 80% design of that, as well as the roundabout that goes in on the north side of Sea Park, which connects through to Throop Road. So to date, as Mayor Tate has alluded to, she wanted me to update. There's 8 main components in the transportation master plan that will fix this problem in Sooke. We've completed 4 of the 8 components right now, which are primarily focused on the arteries. It's unfortunate you don't see the traffic results from building the arteries, but they're all leading up to the heart going in. We have completed Otter Point upgrades. We've completed the Church Road upgrades, including the roundabout. That's an absolute necessity at Church Road to disperse all this traffic movement when the traffic does get flipped. Charters upgrades, that road is in very poor condition. It is well needed. It will be open soon. That is another major artery that's being implemented. The 2 other components with Phillips Road and the bypass being put in, they will be designed and ready to be tendered out next year, probably by summer or fall. The question isn't what will fix the traffic problems in Sooke, it's how much will it cost. So we will bring all this information forward to council. Staff have been dedicated to working on this and implementing every aspect of the plan. We have looked at and analyzed all solutions that have been presented to us, and we'll have recommendations going forward to council and camera this evening, as well as presenting those findings to the public afterwards. And we look forward to working with council on finishing off this plan. We are probably 50% of the way there, and there'll be some tough decisions going forward. It can either be paid for by the public to implement these major pieces that are very expensive, upwards of $30 to $40 million, or the public can accept the conditions how they are and basically wait for potential funding opportunities to come out in the future. But these are decisions and options that my team and my staff will bring forward to council for consideration and then to convey to the public at appropriate timing. Our main goal is getting charters open right now because we want to get that road open for the public, and it was in very poor condition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carter. When you hear like should and would, those are past tense. We can't go back in time. We can only deal with what we know today and move forward. So, and here we are. And it is going to be expensive, but that information will be available, and ultimately it'll be up to residents to decide. It needs to go to a referendum because we would need to borrow the funding of that size. We simply do not have that available right now. And it would be unbearable on property taxes, and we've done our best to increase the fees that developers pay. So everyone is contributing all the way along. So yes, coulda, shoulda, woulda, but that doesn't, we're still in this moment in time today, looking forward. Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so a comment here, our strategic plan is coming together finally, and it'll be a 2-year strategic plan, and we're committed to, I believe we're committed to establishing several, maybe 3 committees. Is that correct? Are we?
That'll be up to council.
That'll be up to council.
The intention would be the strategic plan, and then looking at what is the structure and what sort of committees make sense. Having a committee just to meet because it's nice to have. It needs an absolute purpose and intention.
Yeah. land use and development, community economic development, community safety, health and housing, parks and trails, governance and finance, and transportation are all, but of course, staff has capacity issues and we can only take so much of their time and our own energy to operate these things. So I would suggest that we hold off on a joint traffic committee until we have finalized strategic plan and determine which committees are required. As Mr. Carter has very clearly stated, that there is a transportation master plan that is full on. And I would suggest if we look back over time, we have a matter of will and resolution by Sooke councils, present and past, to pull the trigger and go for it. Now, of course, that was attempted in 2005 with the referendum back then, and that was defeated. And there is the first Sooke Transportation Master Plan of 2000 has a section called Consequences of Doing Nothing. And the key consequence of that doing nothing was traffic congestion. So I think we're coming to one of these critical points where we will need to bring that referendum forward. So I would like to amend this motion to add option 3.
Okay, there's actually no motion on the
Okay, I'd
floor
like
right
to-
now. So you can make the motion and just.
Yeah, I'll make this motion. This is this one here with on the screen. Oh, yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Councillor Beddoes. What are you commenting just on?
Well, I just want a little bit of clarification because we just had Mr. Carter from staff give a detailed explanation of the Throop Road extension and how it is going to cost a lot of money if we go to referendum. But I remember at a previous meeting, our CAO put a dollar amount on your taxes. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if we went for the full borrowing, we're looking at $200 per year per taxpayer, roughly. Is that correct? Is that still valid?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, through
I
your
think
worship.
people need to know the.
I think the original number was just over $300 per year. So I think the latest estimate with the interest rates is $376 per year.
So,
Again, it depends on how much we borrow, obviously. With interest rates decreasing, that helps, a quarter, every interest rate reduction saves on the overall borrowing costs. So that thankfully is going in our favor right now. Time is on our side for that aspect when we come to actually borrowing. But yeah, it's well into the $300 if we were just to borrow today per year.
I just want to have those facts out there. I mean, we've got this great plan, but it's not going to be cheap. And if we don't get grant money, which seems to be dried up these days, that's roughly what it's going to cost each taxpayer to resolve some of these traffic issues. It's not that pleasant. It might have to be done. So.
Just to that point, Councillor Beddoes, that's where when the design is done and we have a sense of pricing, then we'll know what it's actually going to cost. And then we also know what the district's ability to borrow is, because we cannot borrow whatever we want. There is a finite amount of what we can borrow. And then we would need to seek approval and then our residents willing, because it would be, say, $300 for 30 years. And then what capacity then is left over. So this is a long-term debt, but we don't have all of that. But I know that these numbers are floating out there, but that is the reality. And that would be just for the one portion of this build out. So when you hear punch it through, do it now, it's a lot of money and there's a lot of consideration that needs to be done, both environmentally, the active transportation piece, the archaeological piece, and the impact on households. And we need to have all of that information available. And it's just a little premature at this time, but that's what we're looking at going forward. Okay, so Councillor Bateman, so you are looking at the recommendation on the screen, which is in our report, and then it has the 4 points A to D. Okay, and then there's another, then there's the other piece. So why don't you go ahead with your motion, please?
Yeah, so
in the microphone.
So I'd like to see those 2 items on the screen with the addition of the option 3, that council direct staff to present options for increasing communication and engagement service levels in the 2025 budget deliberations to support new initiatives.
Okay, we're just gonna have that added to the motion
Yeah.
on the screen so we can see it, okay? Okay, so we have that council directs staff to enhance existing community engagement initiatives to support as follows. A, support local businesses. B, create an online portal for traffic related reporting. C, connect with local schools and organizations on traffic solutions. And D, develop and promote a carpooling application. And that council directs staff to present options for increasing communication and engagement service levels in the 2025 budget deliberations. And further, that council directs staff to present options for increasing communication and engagement services levels in the 2025 budget deliberations to support new initiatives as follows. A, develop a traffic dashboard to provide real-time traffic data, updates on ongoing projects and historical traffic patterns. B, partner with BC Transit to promote public transportation through campaigns and local stories about positive user experience. C, launch enhanced public awareness campaigns to inform residents about traffic related topics, potentially including traffic safety workshops. And D, create interactive traffic simulations to visualize the impact of proposed changes and gather resident feedback. That's your motion, Councillor Bates?
That is it.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. So go ahead and speak to
So
it.
quickly motivating, I think the first section is doable here and now with a minor expense. The next portions, of course, duplicate each other, but they basically, the point is here, staff can look at potentially the costs of these particular initiatives, which is at the enhanced level, and we'll find out during the budget process whether we can afford them or not. So that it seems like a worthy, and it's a statement that we are in fact wanting to, as I said earlier, up our game and do all that we can do to get cars off the road one by one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor St. Pierre.
I think that what Councillor Bateman has suggested in terms of putting more into reaching out with the public and working with them to actually provide better transportation is critical. I think that, as we heard from our engineer, the district has known for some time that we have to fix things, and we've been working incredibly hard over the last 4 years, Mr. Carter more than anyone, in realizing the transportation master plan that we know will solve these problems. The problem is these are long-term solutions. As everyone knows from charters, it takes time to build roads. Nothing happens instantly that way. There are no instant solutions when it comes to actually building out a road network. So we're basically stuck with making it happen over a period of time, and that's the way it's going to be. But that will be the final solution. Having said that, in terms of short-term, the district hasn't really stepped up in terms of things like offering carpooling apps, providing better information, working on with the public to actually enhance cycling, pedestrian activity, working with the schools and so on and so forth. This is where we can really step up. And that's the short-term stuff. The district is not generally good at short-term. Okay, that's not what we do that well. So this is definitely stepping up the game. I would like to suggest also that if I can make a friendly amendment under item perhaps D, I would like to suggest that we offer support to businesses in terms of providing things like bike racks. Because we have money right now in our climate action fund that could go towards paying for that. It wouldn't have to be funded anywhere else. And guaranteed there'd be more people who would actually be willing to use bikes if they thought they wouldn't get ripped off.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre, I need to see your amendment and put it in here before you motivate on it.
Okay, support local businesses in putting in bike racks.
So you're looking at A or at the bottom section and support local. Okay, it's being added now. Okay.
Okay. We have the money. I think a little help to local businesses and we can make this happen. And it would be a big help.
Are you comfortable with the amendment, Councillor Bateman, or should we be voting on this?
No.
Okay.
That's good.
We'll leave it. Okay. Okay, excellent. Anything from other members of council? No, no, good. Okay. Just there was reference to the survey that was, or a petition that was circulating online. And I'm aware of that. I'm also aware that a similar amount of folks also signed off on a tree protection bylaw. And we have not moved forward on that either. So perhaps it's not a proper way to do business. So I like that we're finding an online portal, getting relevant information from residents. But just be mindful that there's other avenues and other things that we also need to be focused on. So including that. Okay, so I will call the question on all of this as one big suite. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, staff, for your work on this and all of your time. Okay, 10.5, next steps for the Sooke Community Garden Project. We did hear from a resident earlier about this item as well. I'll turn it over to staff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm pleased to provide an update on our community engagement regarding the proposed community allotment garden sites at Woodland Creek Park and Ponds Park corridor. Earlier this year, we heard valuable feedback through surveys, park pop-ups, and door-knocking efforts led by Transition Sooke and Sooke Food Chi. I want to begin by extending my heartfelt appreciation to all of the volunteers and community members who participated in this process. We are listening attentively, and your perspectives are guiding the staff recommendation being shared tonight. Parking emerged as a predominant concern during the consultation, with residents highlighting the current challenges and potential impacts of a garden on neighborhood congestion. Given the resources required to address this top concern, staff do not have the capacity, nor is this work currently identified in the 2024 budget or the 2024 to 2028 five-year financial plan. As a result, at this time, staff do not recommend proceeding with a pilot community allotment garden at Woodland Creek or Ponds Park corridor. That said, we also heard through this engagement that there's a keen desire for more community gardens in Sooke. Over 75% expressed this in the online survey. Over 90% shared this at the pop-ups. And I understand from the project volunteers, as you heard earlier, that this was a sentiment of 100% of the residents during their door knocking portion of the engagement. Further, this is a sentiment expressed continually in Sooke, going back more than a decade, as it's reflected in the current OCP. With this reality, staff are keen to support the dedicated volunteers on their path to realizing a garden in the short term. We have some leads that are in the early stages, not on district land, and are committed to following through on one of these prospects in our commitment to listening to our residents and supporting these willing volunteers who are eager to contribute so positively to our community. It's important to also note that reconfirmed during this engagement is Council's direction to incorporate community gardens as a specific consideration within the John Phillips Memorial Park Master Planning, and for this to take place next year, pending budget. As an option that contributes even in a small way to our local food security, staff wish to proceed with free workshops in the coming months on topics such as container gardening or fall or winter vegetable planting for the community. These would be funded through the Climate Action Program. So while our takeaway from this engagement is not yet to proceed with a new community garden, we are looking forward. And with that, I will once again thank everyone who contributed to the process, and I will leave council with the recommendation for your consideration.
Okay, any questions of staff? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
I think this would be a question for Mr. Carter, but I'm not sure. I have information, but it's off Google, that indicates that actually providing more parking can increase traffic and actually cause more problems with cars. Not sure. I'm curious because I think that right now we have a good recommendation from staff and it's based on data from the community, and that's good. But what I noticed, for example, with Sun River Community Gardens is there's very few cars actually that go there. Their parking lot is generally empty, so there's not a lot of cars to begin with. But also, if you put parking, then there's more cars that actually want to use the parking, and more people make use of the parking. If you don't have the parking, then you would potentially have more community garden members who would simply not use a car because they would have no choice. I'm curious if that was explored at all. And I don't know who, I don't know exactly, actually through your worship, to whoever.
Okay, I'll land that with the CAO.
Thank you. So in working with the volunteers who were leading some of the heavy lifting on it, parking, the accommodation for drop off of supplies, setup, even those considerations, there was some limitations to even address some of that infrastructure. I think in this Sun River Garden allotment gardens rather, there is some parking to accommodate that, but what we saw is that the neighbor and heard loudly from the community is that they're already over capacity. There isn't a current inventory of parking to meet their needs. So well, I certainly hear you. And sorry, I don't have much further to add there, but.
Thank you.
Just for context, the Sun River Allotment Gardens was developed as one big project and then it was phased in over time. So it wasn't that, it was just added. It was just an empty area. And then the vision for the gardens came and then all those garden beds sort of were developed at the same time and then different pieces were added on later. Okay. All right, the recommendation is that, go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
I just need a reminder of the status of the John Phillips Memorial Park planning process where a community garden might be considered in that context. Through you to the CAO or to Ms.
I'll pass it over to Ms.
Mo.
So through your worship, so it would be brought through public consultation alongside master planning for John Phillips Memorial Park pending budget next year. And likely incorporated alongside the similar to the TMP midpoint review as the PTMP, the Parks and Trails Master Plan was adopted at the same time. It is also up for its midpoint review. So there's an opportunity to do those in tandem.
Great, thank you. So the recommendation is that council not proceed with development of a pilot community allotment garden at Woodland Creek Park or Ponds Park corridor at this time, and that council direct staff to coordinate free gardening related workshops for the community from the local government climate action funds. It's moved by Councillor Beddoes and then seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments, Councillor Beddoes?
No, I think that's pretty prudent. And we'll wait till the John Phillips study. I mean, to me, that park's so underutilized, but that's another day, another issue. But this one, I think staff has answered it very nicely. Thank you.
Councillor St. Pierre.
As Councillor Beddoes was saying, and I fully support the recommendations and motion as it stands. I was curious because in the report, we also have mention, of course, of following up with John Phillips, and we have mention of looking at future developments and using amenities-based contributions for community gardens. Why were those not included? Are they happening regardless? Is that the idea? Or? Sorry, through your worship.
So through the CAO to council, yes, and we're seeing that, for example, at the development on Church Road rather, and Road Night is one example where a community garden is integrated, at least for the site. So there are some examples of those. We also saw similarly on Charters Road. So there's some of those initiatives that are taking place in the community already.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to 10.4 or yes, 10.6. I was going to do that after we do these two reports at section 11. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Great. Just moving along. Ravens Ridge Improvements Tender Award 10.6.
Good evening, through the mayor. The district closed tenders for the construction of Ravens Ridge Park improvements on August 22nd of this year. The scope of work includes landscaping, a set of bleachers, a revised parking area, and a multi-sport court that are in alignment with the conceptual design that was completed in 2021 and included in the development permit issued for the park. 3 tenders were received, those being from Escocia Contracting for a value of $579,286, Milestone Equipment Contracting for $1,066,222, and Copcan Holdings Limited for $1,382,140. All bids were audited for errors and deemed in compliance with submission requirements. In accordance with the district's purchasing and disposal of assets policy, staff recommend the contract be awarded to the lowest bidder, which is Escocia Contracting. The total 2024 project budget is $1,006,874 and is sourced from our Growing Communities Fund, as well as the remaining Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation Grant dollars that funded the initial sport box construction that was managed by the CRD over the past few years. So should the contract be awarded to Escocia, the remaining project budget would be $427,587.25. And those funds would be allocated to project management, contract admin, engineering, some of the optional work scoped in the project, as well as contingency funds. WSP Canada will be providing project management and contract admin for the project. And after award of a contract, our website will be updated with our visuals and project information, as well as an updated timeline. In conclusion, staff's recommendation is that council award the Ravens Ridge Park improvements contract to Escocia Contracting in the amount of $579,286.75, excluding GST. I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you very much for the report. That's considerable savings. And I understand this is also a local contractor, so that's wonderful to see. It would be helpful if we could do a media release and just share that concept drawing. Just it wasn't available in our report, so just we can see what is actually transpiring there on the site and the timelines, so that folks can look forward to that. With the additional funds, if at all possible, I'm just throwing this out there, families are looking for picnic tables, and elementary school children would love to see Gaga ball court set up there as well. You'll see it at any elementary school. It's an octagon and you bounce a ball, and I don't know, I think it's like a form of dodgeball in a I don't play it well. But it works like that, and it's very popular at you'll see it at our schools, so there would be an opportunity to play it here. And also there is the Little River Construction Trail coming, so yes, it seems like this is a lot at Sun River, but it's not a one-way bridge, just taking folks from Sun River into town. This connects Journey Middle School. The bridge comes roughly, the trail entrance into Journey and Poye School, so it's all so connecting this side of the population to that site in a safe way. So imagine after school, Journey Middle School kids could then use the trail and access this court as well, whether it's the sport box, the basketball court and the playing court and all the other amenities there. So it's a two-way situation. It's not just taking one set of residents in one direction. It's going in both ways. It's just uphill from the community gardens as well. So it'll also enable folks to travel safely, and residents who may enjoy pickleball or the new skateboard when it's done to be able to go up and enjoy another amenity and also access the trail by the river. So they're very important pieces of infrastructure, and will also move a large volume of school children off the highway and safely into schools and into the connected trail system, which would be a big win for the active transportation users in and around town. So look forward to seeing this unfold. As well as the fire smarting landscaping, which would really be an opportunity just to showcase what that looks like and how we could replicate it on our properties, because this is an area of risk there that we don't want to see. So thank you very much for your work. And the water fountain isn't working there and hasn't for quite some time. So just as we roll ahead, it would be great to see that online again because it does get very hot in that particular location.
Thank you for those suggestions. That's part of the project is the plumbing.
Okay, and there's also a lot of blackberries on the trail behind the sport court for those that are still looking for an untouched site. Just to know, okay. Councillor Lajeunesse, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, there's quite a variation in the price of the bids. So should we be concerned about the quality of construction and materials that they're intending to use?
Staff looked into the figures provided in the estimate. All the components are included. We've conducted reference checks with the contractor, and part of the contract would be taking performance bonding for materials. So we feel that we have a low level of risk and good protection with going with this firm.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre. Go ahead, please.
Oh, it went away. The council award the Raven Ridge Park improvements contract to 845-8642 Canada Limited, Scotia Contracting, in the amount of $579,286.75, excluding GST.
That's moved and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Thank you. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, just a couple of words. Mini putt. I had my daughter and 6 kids dragged to Langford to do mini putt. I was surprised at how little space it took. It doesn't have to be here, but while we're talking about improvements and trying to actually keep activity in Sooke and getting cars off roads, mini putt. Okay.
Hey, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, again, I was quite shocked at the price difference, but the staff has given us assurances that this is the best bang for the buck and quite a considerable saving, and local contractors even better. To Councillor St. Pierre's comment, we at Sea Park have just done a consultation for a strat plan of what the community wants to see in recreation, and I look forward at the end of the month and maybe early October, we're going to have a workshop, and by all means, attend the workshop and give us your ideas. We got a lot of information and we can chart a plan forward for recreation for the next decade. So there you go. Thank you.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so this is wonderful. I did have a question, if I can still pose one at this point, and you're going to supply us with the visual at some point. However, verbally, I think there's a grass field, there's basketball court, bleacher seating, accessible parking, regrading of the slope, multiple varieties of tree planting, and the Mugga court. Now that's particularly intriguing. Can you tell us about the Mugga court?
Indeed, it's through the mayor. It's a multi-use games area is the acronym. So it's essentially an asphalt surface court with perimeter fencing and the ability to attach multiple different nets to it to accommodate up to 8 different activities. Certainly basketball, possibly other net sports like tennis or that type of thing. Possibly a modified Gaga ball. I'm not sure.
Gaga ball is much.
Gaga ball.
But we could play dodgeball on the sport box as is right now. That could be fun. So yeah. Look out. I wouldn't challenge the firefighters, just saying. Okay, I will call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your work on this. We look forward to it coming to fruition. And I'm seeing council is a bit restless, so I will call for a bio break at this time. It's currently 8:06, so we'll recess to 8:17. It's 11 minutes. So if we could have 11 minutes for those that are watching on the webcast, 8:06, we'll resume at 8:17. Okay, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. If you could please get into your seats. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming back. 10.7, public participation policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have too much to add to the report. I hope I've captured your feedback from June appropriately. Simply put, the public participation policy is a commitment by the district to make reasonable efforts to ensure all district engagement activities are accessible, inclusive, and follow best practices in public participation. As a new policy, we're looking to review it annually before transitioning to a longer review period. And with that, I'll leave you with the recommendation on the screen, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
You probably know what's coming. I've mentioned this a few times. We mentioned here transparency, and I think that one of the most critical things is not to have agendas that are in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of reports with huge amounts of information that's essentially really meant for experts, often providing so much information that it's amazing council can get through it, but I'm sure the public doesn't necessarily know what's going on and has a hard time actually understanding what this might look like. The language needs to be clear. The language needs to be, the reasons for decisions to be made need to be super clear. I was incredibly impressed recently when one of our consultants basically said, use a polarity map. These are the consequences of if you do this for the pros and the cons. And these are the consequences if you don't for the pros and the cons. So as we're looking at things like community gardens or this or that or the other thing, what are the consequences of not going forward? Because we don't necessarily look at that. But if we can actually have all that information, we could have real transparency and the public will know what's going on. And honestly, we'll know better what's going on. So as we move forward, I think that things like our agenda, our annual reports, all of those should be immensely shorter and much, much more approachable. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Beddoes.
That council approved the public participation policy number C0-40 dated 22nd July 2020.
Okay, it's moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Beddoes?
Didn't have my mic on, so I hope that went through.
I missed it.
No, I don't have, it's pretty straightforward. It's needed.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, it is straightforward, and I think very much based on best practices out there in the big wide world. I would disagree a little with Councillor St. Pierre, if I may comment at this point. I like tiered approaches where you get the top level overview, executive summary, and then each to our own desire to delve deeper. So I think, well, I think I represent a portion of the community who'd like to delve deeper and try to understand and, you know, cause mischief and trouble by asking stupid questions. But I think there is, yeah, great work. Thank you.
I think for council, it's one report for all 7 of us. And so this is where staff is looking to meet all of our needs, which may or may not be easy. But I think it's the case where here we have in some cases, all the attachments need to come. And it's sort of the way it is. So there needs to be a balance because then we'll run the risk where council will say, I don't have enough information to make a decision on this if it's too brief. So it needs to have the relevant information, but also perhaps over time we'll find a way to satisfy, you know, the deep dive into X. But I think it's always like, what are we actually making a decision about today? Are those material enough to impact the decision making? Well, it's more for curiosity about learning about these sorts of trees that would fire smart a property, for example. Not relevant to fire smarting, but it would be more to satisfy that curiosity. But I think here, this is more the public facing part. But I think by the time staff determine the appropriate fit for council, it'll likely be the next election and we'll need to start that all over again. So good luck. Councillor St. Pierre.
terms of the need for more information, I think hyperlinks can certainly do the job, and we don't need to include all that extra text or waste that extra paper. One more thing that I would like to actually ask about, though, is it's not, I guess, explicit, but I think reaching out to young people in the inclusivity portion, we really need to reach out to young people because their voices are largely unheard and our decisions are affecting them directly.
And just on that note, what anyone that was at the pop-up events this summer, the interesting part of that was the color of different dots. I know that not everyone likes or doesn't like dotmocracy, but there was specific to having one for residents, one for youth, and one for visitors. So then you can see where the priorities align and where they differ because they're a different lens. And so it's hearing, I spend a lot of time with school children, and how they view Sooke is a lot different from a grown person viewing Sooke, but all have their place here, and we're building the town for the future. So that's an example, I think, of what our staff have already done to share so that there's participation on all levels. Yeah, great. Thank you very much for this work. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Well, just one final comment is that this policy follows up on practices that the district has been engaging in really successfully over the last couple of years. So this is a punctuation point and guidance for the future.
Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. We're moving into section 11, which is our bylaw section. So the first one up is 11.1, the zoning amendment bylaw for 2032 Maple Avenue South.
Thank you. This application is in regard to a proposed zoning amendment at 2032 Maple Avenue. The subject property is 1.5 hectares located on Maple Avenue South, south of Grant Road West. The property is within the community residential land use designation of the OCP. It's also split zone, large lot residential, R1, and small scale agriculture, RU3, and contains a single family dwelling located on the R1 portion of the property just to the north. Surrounding land uses include large lot residential to the north, small scale agriculture, and large lot residential to the south, mobile home park to the west, and large lot residential and medium density multifamily to the east. So it's not working. There we go. Okay, this application is proposing to rezone the subject property from R1 and RU3 to the medium density multiple family zone to accommodate a multifamily residential development in the form of townhouses. The proposed RM2 zone is consistent with the community residential land use designation, and therefore an OCP amendment is not required here. While conceptual plans have been submitted, a development permit application would be required following rezoning. DP applications are reviewed in accordance with the relevant OCP guidelines for form and character and environmental protection. This slide here shows a table providing a comparison of the existing R1 and R3 zones with the proposed RM2 zone. Notable differences include the increased residential density from 1 or 2 unit dwellings to a maximum of 50 units per hectare in those townhouse or apartment forms. Notable differences also include greater height allowances from 3 stories to 12 meters and 12 meters to 20 meters, which is roughly about 5 or 6 stories. The proposal is consistent with the existing community residential land use designation where low to medium density residential development is supported. Medium density, in this case, means up to 50 units per hectare. Rezoning to accommodate multifamily residential development satisfies several OCP objectives, such as concentrating new developments, residential development near already developed areas, supporting residential infill development to medium densities by rezoning and subdivision, and encouraging a variety of housing types to diversify the housing stock. 2 water courses were identified by the environmental assessment report submitted with this application. One located south of the property boundary running east-west, and the other runs north-south along the western property boundary. Subject to rezoning at time of development permit, staff would ensure that any proposed development aligns with the relevant development permit guidelines for environmental protection and form and character, as well as any professional report recommendations to follow. The Parks and Trails Master Plan, or PTMP, identifies an aspirational trail located east-west through the subject property. To align with the PTMP and OCP objectives, staff recommend as a condition of rezoning that the owner registers a Section 219 covenant to secure a statutory right-of-way for the purpose of public trail. The SRW will be registered prior to the issuance of a development permit. Language reflected in the recommended motion would allow the 5-meter wide SRW to be narrowed to limit encroachment into the driveway access or riparian area along the access strip, subject to the approval of the manager of parks and environmental services. Regarding agriculture and food security policies, the property located immediately south is designated as ALR. Covenants are generally applied in these cases in order to provide a buffer between farmland and future residential development. However, staff note that the location of the watercourse and the statutory right-of-way for the trail would provide both a legal and natural buffer between the properties. Therefore, an additional covenant is not recommended for buffering purposes. To align with OCP policy for affordable housing, the applicant has agreed to contribute $3,000 per unit to the Affordable Housing Fund. The affordable housing contribution is recommended to be secured by registration of a Section 219 covenant as a condition of adoption of the proposed amendment bylaw. This contribution would be received by the district prior to issuance of a building permit, as per the draft covenant attached to the report, attachment 6. Under Bill 44, local governments are now prohibited from holding a public hearing for rezoning applications where the proposal is consistent with the official community plan. The purpose of the bylaw is for residential development, and the residential component accounts for at least half of the development. In this case, a public notice was required prior to first reading, published in accordance with Section 94 of the Community Charter. This includes a mail out and advertising in the local newspaper. 76 notices were mailed to property owners within 100 meters of the property. No submissions were received from the public. For staff recommendations, that council give first, second, and third reading to zoning amendment bylaw to rezone the property from R1 and RU3 to RM2, and that prior to final adoption of the bylaw, the applicant register a Section 219 covenant to secure an affordable housing contribution of $3,000 per unit and registration of a 5-meter wide statutory right-of-way for future trail in accordance with the Parks and Trails Master Plan, with reduction to the width of the SRW considered within the access strip portion of the property, subject to the approval of the manager of parks and environmental services. This concludes my presentation. Please note that the applicant is in attendance and is available for questions, as am I. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the report and the presentation. Turn to council if there are questions of staff. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, let's see, there was in the Parks and Environmental Services referral report a reference to, given the panhandle frontage of the subject property, council may wish to consider requesting additional frontage improvements to achieve the pedestrian connectivity and active transportation goals of the PTMP and Transportation Master Plan. So is that has not been addressed in this file to this point, or was it considered?
Not to my recollection, no, we're not asking for any additional widening of the road or dedication of roadway as part of a condition of the zoning adoption.
So Maple Avenue, what is its width? Because it's certainly not being built out to the 20-meter standard.
Yeah, through the mayor, I honestly don't know, Jeff.
No.
Mr. Carter perhaps would know.
Through your worship, Councillor Bateman, it would be built out to a 20-meter width. I don't know if 100% was secured in the terms of this development, but everything should be in alignment. It's gone through my staff. It's been vetted by Ms. Taylor. So I would be supportive of what staff is presenting tonight.
Okay, yeah. That doesn't really address the point that Maple Road is, Maple Avenue South is particularly narrow and there's no sidewalks. It's a tricky stretch in my limited experience along there as a pedestrian.
Sorry, my hopes is the road frontage program I alluded to earlier today.
There we are.
Will help address something like this.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Question that I have is, I thought that when rezoning happened that there would be park dedication made or a contribution? When does that actually happen? Isn't it like
Yeah,
5%?
through the mayor, it can happen as part of rezoning conditions. Typically through subdivision, and the Land Title Act requires 5% dedication time of subdivision of 4 or greater lots. In this case, we're asking for dedication of through SRW, having a future trail connection there because it's identified within our Parks and Trails master plan, but we're not asking for anything above and beyond what's identified in those master plans.
Okay. And so I note that in the report, you had also indicated that you had mailing out advertising and there were no responses from the public. And earlier tonight, we didn't hear from any members of the public. And I'm just raising that because then if you were to wade into the social media realm, there's the commentary of stop rezoning, don't approve anything. So how do we take that into case when that's when you're hearing, well, no more rezoning, no more approval of units until the transportation is done? I'm not suggesting that that is, it's just, this is where when you receive that in one reality, but when it actually comes forward in this setting, no one's written in, there's not a single email, nobody spoke on that matter earlier today. So it's it's just something to bear in mind that when the time comes to actually make a decision, this is where we're actually making a decision to completely alter land use. And some are saying, stop approving, don't rezone. And in some cases, we're dealing with development permits, but the rezoning is already done. And here we are, it's just an example of one. You have any comment on any of that? It's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, generally through the mayor, I guess, generally, citizens that are connected with different forms of social media are understanding, I guess, the agendas and the items on them, have an opportunity to speak, like at the comment period, I guess, at these meetings. I would say probably during the engagement sessions as part of the official community plan would be a good time to discuss growth and what's appropriate for this community. In this case, we have a land use designation as community residential, which permits up to 15 units per hectare in various zones. Not all zones necessarily can accommodate 15 units per hectare, but this zone has been proven to be able to do that. And that's why that's why staff are here supporting the first, second, and third reading of this proposed amendment.
And from what I've seen with the proposed draft OCP, it's the same indicator that this is a community residential area, and one that's being infill would still be the same. So even though we're using the older one, the newer one would reflect the same outcome. Yeah, okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
I'd like to move the recommendation of staff. Read that out. The council give first, second, and third reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 911 600-105. Whoops, just moved. 2024 to rezone the subject property legally described as Lot C, Section 3, Sooke Land District Plan VIP 62417, 2032 Maple Avenue South from R1 Large Lot Residential and RU3 Large Scale Agriculture to RM2 Medium Density Multifamily 2. And that prior to final adoption of zoning amendment bylaw number 911 600-105 2024, the owner enter into a section 2019 covenant registered in priority of all other charges on title to secure the following: an affordable housing contribution of 3,000 per unit to the Housing Reserve Fund, establishment bylaw number 259 2006, and prior to the issuance of a development permit, registration of a 5-meter wide statutory right-of-way for a future trail through the property in accordance with the Parks and Trails Master Plan 2020, with reduction to the width of the statutory right-of-way considered with the access strip portion of the property, subject to the approval of the manager of Parks and Environmental Services.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Would you like to speak to it?
I'd like to just comment on what you were just asking. I think that often people don't necessarily understand that the district doesn't have the ability to stop all developments. So it seems easy to say, don't provide any rezoning, but that doesn't actually provide relief to the roads because there's still a lot of areas which are zoned for lots of extra houses. So all it does is keep us from putting the development where it should go, but it doesn't stop more growth from happening. So it's not a real solution. I'm just going to put that out there.
Councillor Lajeunesse.
Nothing further.
Anything from anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, this is, I think it's just important to get back to Maple Avenue South as a road that needs some care and love. There are 58 homes already coming onto that road in underway or approved, and this will be 40 more. And yeah, it's getting busy along what once was a sleepy little rural road, but that changed in, I think, 2011, when the road was suddenly paved and people have been driving and picking up speed along there ever since. I just wanted to close out by saying I've got a referral here from 2021, and I think it's related to this file, but the fire department would like to engage with property owners, seeing if the department could use existing structure for training evolutions prior to its demolition as part of the redevelopment of this property. So this is for firefighter training. If indeed the building's coming down, then I think the fire department would like to have some fun with it. Yeah, okay, thank you.
You good training exercise, if appropriate. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to the next one, 11.2, highway closure and removal of highway dedication bylaw.
Thank you, your worship. Through your worship to council, on April 11th, regular council meeting, council directed staff to prepare a bylaw to close and remove the portion of highway dedication and proceed with the process to dispose of a portion of undeveloped section of Goodmere Road, approximately 23 meters square. The purpose of the report tonight is to introduce highway closure and removal highway dedication bylaw 890/2024, which will allow for the consolidation of this portion of Goodmere Road into a larger portion of land in order to facilitate the future development of the site, which is supported by staff, as well as future dedications that will happen through that site. If council resolves to give 3 readings of this bylaw this evening, staff will proceed with the next required steps and bring the bylaw to an upcoming council meeting for legislative public input opportunity and adoption. After adoption, the proposed purchase and sale agreement will be presented to council for consideration. If authorized, legislative notice of land disposition will be published in the paper for 2 weeks in accordance with section 26 of the community charter. Following resolutions are for council's consideration this evening.
Okay, thank you. Questions for staff from council? No? Okay, so would someone like to move the motion? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Turn it on this time. Okay, the council give first, second, and third reading to highway closure and removal of highway dedication bylaw number 890/2024. And the council directs staff to send highway closure and removal of highway dedication bylaw number 890/2024 to the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure for ministerial approval. And the council directs staff to proceed with a public notice for public input on the highway closure and removal of highway dedication bylaw number 890/2024 in accordance with section 43A of the community charter. And further, the council directs staff to proceed with the notification of adjacent property owners of the proposed highway closure and removal of highway dedication bylaw number 890/2024 and council's intention of sale in accordance with the district road closure and sale policy 2.2.
Thank you. That's moved, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Would you like to speak to it? Councillor Lajeunesse, anything from anyone else? All those in favor, please. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 11.3, 20. Oh. Okay, Councillor Beddoes is stating declaring a conflict of interest and leaving the room. And we will find you where. Okay. All right, maybe just if you could shut that door. Okay, thank you. And 11.3, 2008 Murray Road.
Yes, your worship, members of council and staff and the public. This is an application for an official community plan amendment, as well as a rezoning application. Where this is for 2008 Murray Road. The subject property is 1,651 square meters. It's presently a vacant site. It has some mature trees on it, but it has no development on it at this stage. The existing zoning is public recreation, P1. The existing official community plan designation is park, and it's within the town center neighborhood. The surrounding uses, see if my pointer works here. Okay. Right. Okay. 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 Got to go to the right slide. There we go. Okay, so so the subject property is this one right here on Murray Road. I just wanted to reiterate that the subject property is just the property immediately adjacent to Murray Road. There is a neighboring property that is treed as well, as you can see on the screen there. So I guess just for clarification, when you're standing on Murray Road, you can look through the subject property and you see trees on the neighboring property. That property is not part of this. It's just the property immediately adjacent. So that can be confusing for people. The other thing to reiterate is this is private property and has been historically a park. And the Lions have owned the park since, or owned the property since 1965. They have had a number of different uses on the site, such as play equipment, public washrooms. But as a result over the years of a fair bit of vandalism and damage to the equipment and the washrooms on the property, and the cost and time to repair constantly those uses, the Lions eventually demolished those things, and it now sits vacant. In 2018, there was an application or consideration of an OCP amendment and rezoning by Habitat for Humanity. They eventually withdrew that application due to public opposition. In July of 2021, the property was considered for sale to the district, and there was a proposal to lease some land to the Lions for their clubhouse on John Phillips Memorial Park. That proposal eventually died on the vine as well. So today we're looking at an application to change the official community plan amendment from park to town center, and changing the zoning from public recreation P1 to general commercial C2. The applicant is proposing to accommodate development of a health services facility, but as has been mentioned a couple of times today already, any application, any specific use on this property will be determined at the development permit stage. At this stage, we're strictly looking at this property in terms of zoning from the park to the C2. So any of the uses within that C2 zone would be permitted until an actual specific application through development permit comes forward for a specific use. So just to clarify that. So the existing designation on the property is park, and the property has been designated park since prior to the incorporation of district and carried over on various official community plan updates and master plans. So the proposed OCP land use designation that is being applied for is to town center. The goals and objectives for the town center designation is to concentrate retail services, personal services, support mixed uses, including high density residential, extend streets from Sooke Road to the waterfront, and improve the waterfront access from Murray Road. So this gives you a sense of the comparison. So this on, oh, wrong button. There we go. So on this side here is the uses that are permitted in the parks and recreation P1 zone. And then on the neighboring side here, this is what the C2 uses would be. So I haven't listed every single use, but there is approximately 36 different uses that are permitted within the C2 zone. So you can see things like convenience store, funeral home, health services, hotel, motel, office, place of worship, personal services, so quite a variety of different uses. In comparison, in terms of the height, you're looking at a 13-meter height restriction for the P1 versus a 14-meter height restriction for the C2. Slightly increased coverage of the site and different setbacks. In terms of the Parks and Trail Master Plan, this property is identified as open space. And just to note, this site is an anomaly. It's not common for a P1 zone property to be privately owned. I think all other P1 zone properties are publicly owned and maintained. So going to the proposals on the Parks and Trails Master Plan, you can see that the subject property is in the subject properties in the middle here of the line around that sort of purple line there around is the subject property area. And they're the town center area, sorry. And so they have identified 2 park locations for the future. There's the lot A, or where the public library is at this point in time. That lot is designated for a park. And then there's a letter F that's looking at a park in the Bayshore development area. So this specific lot hasn't been identified in the Parks and Trails Master Plan as a future park. And it's also been identified that future parks in this area need to be a minimum of 0.4 hectares, of which this is only about a third of that, or half to a third of that. So it's too small a lot for what the municipality is looking for the future. The other thing that's being encouraged along Murray Road is for proper pedestrian amenities and facilities for pedestrians to get from the highway or from downtown Sooke down to the waterfront and the boardwalk there. So there was a conceptual plan provided, and that's shown on the left side of the screen. So it shows a building close to the Sooke Road, or the West Sooke Road side of the property, and parking in behind, and then they've left the Sitka spruce and some of the maple trees on the site. We did get an arborist report to identify what the condition of the trees on the site are and how those trees could be protected during construction and on an ongoing basis. And we are recommending that arborist report and the recommendations within are put as part of a covenant on the property, so that any future development of that site would require those trees to be preserved and incorporated into any future development. So this particular applicant is proposing to retain and maintain those trees, but that doesn't mean that any future owners would have to do that. So by putting the covenant on the property, any future owner, it would be on the title of the property, and any future, if the property was sold and somebody else was developed, they would be committed to retaining those trees. In terms of the recommended conditions for this particular application, as per the previous one on Maple Avenue, we're suggesting that there be a covenant put on title for the affordable housing contribution of $3,000 per residential unit. And that's assuming that some residential development happens on this site. That's not the plan for the existing applicant, but if in the future there was residential that would need to pay into the affordable housing contribution, they would need to make a road dedication along Murray Road, and they would need to do the frontage improvements along Murray Road, including sidewalks and boulevard. And they would need to protect the trees in accordance with the arborist report. So there is a public hearing required for this particular application because it's not a residential application. It's going to commercial. And we will be notifying the surrounding neighbors in a 100-meter radius and putting ads in the newspaper, 2 consecutive issues of the newspaper prior to the public hearing as part of the notification for that public hearing. So in conclusion, staff are recommending this particular application because of the fact that it's a privately owned property. It's not a public park. It's not a size of park or location of a park that's been identified in our Parks and Trail Master Plan. This rezoning allows for us to protect those trees long-term. The present owners or any future owners, if it wasn't rezoned, could chop those trees down, could put a fence around that property, and it wouldn't be able to be used by anybody, but would be protected from liability and maintenance and things that the Lions are presently dealing with right now. The commercial zoning would go towards focus of service and employment within the downtown area. And the development of the site would enhance the pedestrian movement along Murray Road by providing that dedication of the right-of-way and putting the sidewalk in and creating that safer pedestrian movement up and down Murray Street. So with that in mind, staff are recommending the following recommendation, which is to set up a public hearing for the official community plan amendment and the zoning amendment application. And that be in association with a covenant to connect the arborist report to the property and require that the $3,000 per residential unit for affordable housing be provided. And if you have any questions, I'm here and can answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation and the report. I'll open it up to questions from council. I'll start with one. It's just on the choice to the general commercial. There is a very wide range of commercial uses there. In the event that, you know, the property is rezoned and the current arrangement doesn't progress, I'm wondering about some of these potential uses on this land, like a car wash, a gas bar. They just don't seem to fit that property. Parking lot. I mean, retail, vehicle sales and rentals. So what do we do with that? Like, in some ways, it's the case of those uses just bus depot. I mean, some of these, okay, I think may or not fit on the proper land. But just thinking ahead, I just don't feel that, like, we don't want to see a gas bar show up there. So what do we do with that? Because this zone would allow for all those things. And once the zoning's in place, we can't take that. So then what?
Yeah, Your Worship, the zoning actually does have conditions of use. So for things like the gas bar and the auto service facilities, those are actually restricted to north of Highway 16 and are actually restricted from areas south of Highway 14. So so this property wouldn't be permitted to have those specific uses that you spoke to.
Okay, it might be helpful, should this advance to the public hearing, just to have, because I kind of missed that. And I know that at one point we had 2 different zones for the commercial, and now they've merged together. So that's where my memory isn't always reliable, but that's where if someone were to look at that, they may look at it in the same view. So it may be helpful just to show that in a different light on what would actually be permissible there, should that come forward.
Yeah, and just also to further to your question about specific uses. So it would be my preference as the Director of Planning Development to require that all rezoning applications come with a development permit, that they be in tandem, and the pushback from the development community will be, well, you know, this is going to cost a lot of money, all these studies, all this stuff. And if I get to the public hearing and it gets turned down, then I've just wasted all my money. Right. The answer to that is, well, you can take it to the public hearing with the development permit, plans in place, maybe not to the same detail, and have that detailed out prior to the actual adoption. So there's ways to work around going to the ultimate detail. But I mean, if you're going to go to a public hearing, it's going to be with staff recommending it and with council support up to that point. It's definitely a risk for the applicant, but at the same time, it takes away that unknowing of what are we actually rezoning. And I think it's only fair to the public to provide the actual plans of what's being proposed, because as we've said, once the zoning goes through, the person can just flip the property, makes a bunch of money, and then it's on to the next applicant, and whatever they said they were going to do doesn't necessarily happen. So it would certainly be my preference to do that, go that route in the future, and we can certainly have that discussion at some point in time. But yeah, I definitely see the benefit of that. And just like the Maple Avenue application, I mean, they say that, one thought that their concept was 40 units of townhouses. Well, it's not necessarily going to be 40 units of townhouses, because they could sell it and somebody else buys it and they do a different formation of housing, mix of apartment and townhouses, or however they want to get their density. And so what are the neighbors actually commenting on? How is it going to really impact them? So anyway.
I appreciate that. It's just, it's a difficult one, because it's really going to depend on the applicant, whether or not they decide to go ahead. And that's where I'll use the land across the street that was rezoned back in, I don't know, 2008, Knott's Brook. There was a development permits long since expired, and the properties changed hands. So there's no, even if they came together, it may not be, but the zoning will still stay with the land forever, and the development permit could change over time. So I think that's where it's just, in the end, we're dealing with the zoning, and then that'll be what'll prevail. So that's where I think it's just understanding that piece there. And I get the concept, so we can see where things fit on the land, but it may or may not. And I've seen that Drennan property is an example where there were to be build out all over that site. And then when it never came to be, and now there's one building on the site because of the archaeological finds and the environment setbacks. So what was approved, Mariners Village, is another, where what I saw when that came from approval isn't completely different what it is today. So I think those are just important pieces for the public. So I hear we are dealing with the zoning, and it's just complex with the uses, but I understand why you're supporting it, so that's fine. The other question is that this property does have a permissive tax exemption. So does that disappear when the ownership actually completely changes hands, or how does that work?
I can speak to that briefly. So the district has a permissive tax bylaw that's in place for 5 years, subject to any change. Every year, there's a timeline and a deadline for changes to that bylaw or additions to that bylaw. Submissions are due to the district by the end of August, and the final adopted bylaw has to be provided to BC assessment by the October. So depending on the timing of when all this happened, it would depend, but definitely, absolutely, whether maybe 1 year grace period, depending on the timing of change of ownership, because it doesn't change midway through the year. The next year, for sure, they would be removed from the permissive tax bylaw. This property was still on there.
And we saw that with the Salvation Army, where they existed in what is now Route 14. There was a permissive tax exemption, and then it shifted and changed. So it's commercial now. Okay, thank you. Councillor St. Pierre.
Through your worship to staff, just a quick question. I noticed in the rationale from the potential developers, under importance of green space, they talk about their garden. We talked about this earlier in the meeting. Is this meant to be a community garden or a garden for their clients? Just curious.
Again, it's conceptual, and so
okay,
it's not something that we have any control over. And if they were to put green space there, it would be up to them to determine how it was used and what kind of liability they wanted to take on if they were going to open it to the public. So that's depends on how they want to use it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so to this covenant, tree protection covenant is anticipated to maintain green space and mature trees. Does that include the park-like area of the property between the trees? South of the gravel parking lot?
Through your worship, yes, sorry, I guess no, the trees will be
Just the
protected.
trees.
Yeah. And there will be, for instance, fencing around, put in place around the trees during construction to make sure that there's no fill put on there, that trucks don't park on the roots. And
right.
So there's a lot of talk in the arborist report around how to protect those trees during construction. But yeah, what happens in between the trees is not identified at this stage.
And so you've included in the report seeded trees, full package, and supplementary accommodations from all sorts of significant people. And that does, as our commenter said earlier in public comment, does color our decision on what is. So is it a bit of a wing and a prayer that we, if we were to move forward and trust in the applicant to deliver? Because this new era of when we bring those two paired together to a rezoning hearing has not reached us yet.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that what they're proposing will ultimately happen. You know, I'm sure they have the best of intentions and they may absolutely follow through, and I no doubt they will, but I can't provide that guarantee to you.
So following up on Mayor Tate's comments, is it possible to take that C2 zone and eliminate those uses that we really don't want, whether it's north or south of the highway?
Yes, through your worship, you could do site-specific zoning that restricted the uses on that specific site.
Okay.
But I think, just to follow up with that, I think that the majority of the uses that Mayor Tate expressed concern with have been dealt with through the conditions of use that restrict those uses. Yeah.
All right. Well, I look forward to the public hearing.
Okay, anything from other members of council? No? Okay. So, okay, the recommendation is then that council give first, and then just one technical question would be, during the public hearing, that is when the applicant would also be able to speak on their plans and the like, is within that public hearing. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that council give first and second reading to official community plan amendment bylaw, number 913-400-17, 2024, to amend the land use designation of the property legally described as Lot B, Section 3, Sooke Land District Plan VIP 2451, 2008, Murray Road, from Park to Town Center. And that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 914-600-106, 2024, to amend the zoning of the property legally described as Lot B, Section 3, Sooke Land District Plan VIP 2451, 2008 Murray Road, from public recreation P1 to general commercial C2. And that council directs staff to schedule a public hearing for the proposed amendment bylaws in accordance with Section 466 of the Local Government Act, and that prior to final adoption of the amendment bylaws, the owner register a Section 219 covenant to address an affordable housing contribution in the amount of $3,000 per unit, road education and tree protection. So that's moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor St. Pierre?
Yes, I would. I think it's important to note here that it's always a wing and a prayer on pretty much whether or not a developer is going to follow through. That's just the way it is right now. Even if the development permit comes in tandem, it's still a wing and a prayer because the money might not materialize. Interest rates might spike. Who knows? It's always a wing and a prayer. At this point, however, we have essentially an owner that means very well towards the community. And from what we can tell, a potential developer that also wants to do good things for the community. That's a pretty sweet situation to be in. That's not normally what we have. Normally, we really have a complete wing and a prayer. We don't have rationales this long with all these details. I think it's also interesting to note as our director of planning, whose last name escapes me, but his name is Chris, escapes me right now, that the Lions would be within their rights to basically chop down every tree, use the wood to build a fence around the property, put up a clubhouse covering 50% of their property and turn the rest into a parkade within the existing zoning, which doesn't mean that it's actually going to protect this property for the benefit of the community in a better way. Moving in this direction, we have the option of putting covenants to protect the trees. We have the option of actually seeing the potential developers' plans realized, and that would actually be a huge benefit to the community. So I'm hoping this situation where the stewardship is being passed on to another entity that really means well for the community, and we'll have to see because it's a wing and a prayer.
Okay, as a seconder.
Yes, I would agree with that. And having spoken with the potential developer, the service that they provide to our community is, I would classify as an essential service. It's something that we desperately need. I'm tired of seeing our businesses relocate to Langford and other municipalities because there's no commercial space available. And as land assembly occurs in the town center, there will be opportunity to provide some really nice parks in the future, hopefully in the near future, because our town center, we talked about creating a vibrant town center for the last 20 years, and it has yet to happen. This site, I think it's as our director of planning pointed out, it's too small for what we've defined as town center parks. There are other properties surrounding there that would make much better parks. And as Councillor Bateman, I think, pointed out, we have Lot A, where there will be public space in the town center, and also at Mariners Village or whatever it's called now. So I'm supportive of this.
Go ahead.
So I'll reserve my comments for the public hearing for that process. And I can see, yeah, I think that's all I'll say at this point.
Okay, thank you. I am in support in moving this forward. This property needs to see the light and the public has to have an actual real opportunity to express their thoughts. There's many in support, there's many not in support, but we have not, other than received correspondence or here and there, have not, this property hasn't had that opportunity, and it deserves that. Everyone does to express their views and what will be a safe way and a safe space to do so. And I look forward to that. So there will be 2 scheduled notices, and then we'd be looking probably into October, I suppose, for that public hearing, and it'll be advertised and communicated through the regular channels. So I look forward to that, and I'll save my comments for that time so we can receive all the information, and I look forward to hearing from the owner and the applicant at that time as well. Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. And if we can find Councillor Beddoes, we'll carry on. Thank you. I also recognize that many of you are likely here for this tonight, but please feel free to stay with us for the rest of the meeting as we still have other items that I'm sure you're very interested in. Okay, so item 12, a motion for which notice has been given. So Councillor Bateman, I just want to ask, this I understand was to come with the July 22nd meeting where we had a scheduled presentation. We are looking to reset that, and as I understand, it's being rescheduled to October. So would you like to still deliberate this tonight or postpone?
No,
to
I will
October?
postpone that. I think it's October 21st, Committee of the Whole. Is that correct? Yes, okay. So I'll hold off until then. Do I?
So if you could make a motion to postpone.
Yeah, I'd like to move postponement of that notice of motion.
To the October Committee of the Whole. Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Welcome back. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. There's no new business that I'm aware of, so we're moving into correspondence now. So the first one is 14.1, report regarding Sooke traffic survey responses, pulled by Councillor Bateman.
Well, yeah, thank you. I've already noted the high quality of that report, the two reports, one on business impacts, one on commuter impacts. Yeah, what I've written here, I would like to thank Ms. Santowski for taking the traffic by the horns and both initiating and assembling these reports. She launched both surveys in late May. Shortly after the charter's closure, they captured a wealth of commuter and business input through June. And I've just pulled it out of the depths of the correspondence file to ensure it's in a public agenda so that it's front and center. Everyone can have a look at it and refer to some of the strong reasons why we need to keep advocating with the province and get our traffic situation in order. Thanks.
Okay, so motion to receive and file now. Okay, by Councillor Bateman, seconded by St. Pierre. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The next is 14.2. So request for reconsideration and formal council review of business license application denial.
Yeah, so I just pulled this because a resident asked council to have a look at this file. So I did pull it, and our correspondent argues that her home, one of the 27 condominium units at the foot of Maple Avenue South, qualifies as a short-term rental, given that the C2 zone allows hotel or motel as a permitted use. And she also includes the definition of hotel from the zoning bylaw and notes that her condo unit does indeed qualify according to those terms. This might be a loophole I've written here. However, I do note that the definition of hotel refers to units in the plural rather than singular. And so personally, I recommend that we follow our bylaw officer's authority on this matter and receive this letter for information. But I'm interested in if our CAO has any comments. So through you or anyone else on this file?
Yes, sorry, I thought Mr. Riley was still here. He was prepared to speak to this, but Mr. Marshall can just provide a bit of clarity on that.
Yeah, so the issue with this is that the way that short-term rental works is that you have to live in the home that you're renting the space out to. So certainly if they wanted to rent out a bedroom within their living space, then they're welcome to do that. But, you know, they're talking about leaving the space and renting out the whole apartment, you know, like in isolation. So that doesn't meet the criteria. So, yeah, that's our interpretation, and that's why it's been denied at this point.
Thank you. So I'd like to move receipt for information.
Thank you. And second, moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by St. Pierre. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. 14.3 is the one that I've pulled. This is a response back to us from the Ministry of Education and Childcare. So for a few years now, our SD 62 trustees have been pushing for the seismic upgrade of our schools. namely with Sooke Elementary. You maybe recall a couple of years ago, they submitted a business case to address all three elementary schools. And we just don't seem to be getting anywhere. And the schools are just aging as they are. And so this is the response I got. It is disappointing. We have looked for a meeting with the minister responsible at UBCM. It'll be interesting to share because last year when we were meeting with the minister, I got a notification afterwards because my son goes to Sooke Elementary. All the children were outside for 2 hours in the rain because of a natural gas smell, and they had to do a full assessment of the school before the kids, it was deemed clear and safe, were allowed to enter the site. And in my tenure as mayor, there's also been 2 electrical fires within that same property. And the original build out is over a century old now. There's a historical marker on the site. And this is what our youngest demographic is dealing with. And I should have taken pictures in the rain last year at the portables of all the rust and just whatever coming off of these buildings, leaching out into the playing ground that kids are walking through and playing in every day. So the school staff are doing amazing work. The school is in great shape as best as it can be. They're doing excellent work. The PAC is doing amazing work. Everyone there is doing the best they can with what they have. It's just unfortunate when you visit other areas and other schools of what our school staff are dealing with right now. So we'll continue on. This year in particular has been a difficult one for parents being hit with a transportation fee, $333 per child, capping out about $870. It's a really big hit at the start of the school year. And it's because the funding is not growing. So the trustees are unfortunately doing a difficult task of trying to deal with a growing student population and offer excellent programming with a pot that just doesn't seem to be growing. So I don't feel our advocacy is not over. There's still a lot to do. So it's good timing and hopefully we will get some attention in our schools because I believe our children deserve it. So on this note, motion to receive and file and we'll continue on. Thank you, St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. 14.4 is just forestry works for BC. It was just an interesting read. I just brought it here just for we're a forestry community with those histories. So it's just here for information. So I have nothing to add other than to receive for information. Councillor St. Pierre to receive, seconded by Bateman. Any comments on it?
Well, yeah,
Yes.
I just think it's interesting. I think October 4th is now set for the date for the unveiling of the mural. Yes, and that's the mural next to the Stick in the Mud Roasterarium. Roastorium. And it's a really beautiful vision of a future whereby the forestry industry and the First Nations are collaborating on long-term multi-generational preservation of the forests. And I don't know if this is apropos to the letter itself that you've received here, the campaign, but I think we in Sooke could organize some sort of summit meeting and get the various groups together around a table to look at this vision of a forestry future and say, is this realistic? Is this, given the course we're in right now, it might be worthwhile. So I'll bring that up later. But for now, I just took the opportunity to natter on for another.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Did you have something to add, Councillor St. Pierre? Go ahead.
Briefly, I thought that the letter actually mentioned specifically sawmills being worried about having logs. And my understanding is a lot of those logs are being exported. So I'm curious if this might not be something to bring to UBCM as a potential resolution to see whether or not the province can do anything about keeping more of those logs for our local mills.
Well, it's good timing because you'll see the resolutions next week, right? And we'll see where other communities are and It's way too late to entertain one now, but certainly going forward into the future, it's something to look at because. Yeah.
It feels like an advocacy piece.
Yes, I just don't know that it's ours right now, but we'll see what comes out. Okay, thank you. All those in favor of receipt? And that's carried unanimously. Items removed from consent agenda, there were none, so we have council verbal reports, and I'm going to start with Councillor Beddoes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a little update from Sea Park. We had quite an interesting meeting on Tuesday. And as you know, we're looking at refurbishing the Sooke Skate Park. It's at the end of its life. We did a couple of workshops, and the workshops, there was a tremendous interest in the community of having a nice new skate park. So anyways, after all that, the commission passed a motion to Sea Park recommends to the Capital Region District Board that staff be directed to prepare a new loan authorization bylaw to fund the Sooke Skate Park replacement and phase 1 of the heat recovery project for Sea Park Recreation Center. With electoral approval obtained through an alternate approval process. Now, the second part of that is the heat exchanger, and the total of what we're asking to borrow is 3.1 million. 2 million is for the heat exchanger, and that's to put us on a road to net zero by 2030. So that was unanimous that we voted for that to happen, and for those that are interested, it means an extra $13.83 on your tax if you live in Sooke on an annual basis, or $8.81 if you're in the surrounding Juan de Fuca. The rationale behind the commission was we need to get on with some of these recreation things for the kids. We're a growing community, and unfortunately, some things cost money. We haven't been able to get any grants so far, but we're still looking for more grants. So we're going ahead with that process, and hopefully that will go through and we can get the kids a new skate park. It's dangerous, it's old, it's wearing out, and a good cooperation from School District 62, which owns the land. So it's happening. So that's basically it.
Do you want to talk a bit about the strategic planning, the long range?
I could. The strategic plan, I mentioned it earlier on today, is that we have compiled a great deal of data. Believe it or not, most of it comes in electronically. People don't stand and chat. They like to send it by email or text or whatever. Did a great job. Surprisingly, one of the things which I thought we'd see a high number of is pickleball. And there wasn't a great deal of support for it. There was some support, but not overwhelming as I thought it would be. But anyways, we have all the data. We're doing a workshop either at the end of September, or early October, and that's for the commission members. And there's 2 of them, one with the staff and one with us, and hopefully other people can come as well. And we can get on with that and lay out a plan for the next 10 years. Or 15 as to where we go for recreation in our community. Is it more ice time? Is it tennis? Is it basketball? We'll find those things out, and we will chart a course forward. So it was quite a robust meeting. I'm very, very pleased with the staff down at Sea Park. Their reporting is I think Councillor Bateman attended that meeting, and they were right on the money with the answers for us. So yeah, it's a good meeting and things are happening, and I'm looking forward to this next year with Sea Park.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beddoes. I'll just share that the request from the commission is on the board this Wednesday. So they've been able to advance it very quickly, which is great, and that'll start off the process should it be endorsed by the board itself. Next councillor, please. Councillor St. Pierre.
This will be jumping the gun a little bit, but our mayor will be attending the Vancouver Regional Transit Commission meeting tomorrow. And a report from staff at that point will be arriving on the local buses and what it would cost to have our routes free. The cost is somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000 or so. My numbers are way off. I had the report in front of me, but now it's blank because our internet sucks. But having said that, there'll be some interesting discussions and thoughts for us at that point in terms of what we want to do that information, whether or not the VRTC will potentially want to pick up the bills, whether or not we can work with the community to basically get people utilizing these underutilized routes. They travel every 2 hours, but if we worked with the local business community and had fun routes where you go visit, have tea, have coffee, pick up your groceries, get up on the bus for free, half our emissions on GHGs are from local transit. It's not actually commuting alone. It's half our emissions are local transit. So I'm hoping this could potentially be a little bit of a game changer if we can actually get all the pieces moving. The first piece was getting this report, so I'm quite excited.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, just few things. The Sea Park, I'm curious as to whether the proposed gathering place is something that Sea Park could look at helping with. I mean, most of what Sea Park does is geared toward youth activities, and the gathering place is looking at youth and seniors activities, and so maybe there's a role for Sea Park to play in that. But a couple other things, that's just a thought that I had as I was listening to you.
Roll it down.
Okay, good. So at the CRD Water Commission meeting in July, I think it was, there was a lot of discussion about safe drinking water. So there's this new expansion plan, and for 2.5 hours, the commission talked about safe drinking water. And at the end of that meeting, it occurred to me that in that very same boardroom, they're discussing dumping the solid waste from Victoria's wastewater treatment plant in the Juan de Fuca, where all of the residents are on well water and spring water. And so I'm not sure how safe drinking water fits into that. But I did speak with the board chair at another event I was at, the announcement of the priority bus lanes from View Royal to Mackenzie. And he assured me that the plan to dump the waste in the Juan de Fuca was Plan C, and so there were a couple other plans that are taking precedence over that. And last week I attended the, I got to read this, King Charles, I put my goggles on. King Charles the Third Coronation Awards were awarded to former Chief Gordon Planis, Elder Shirley Alphonse, Mosa Oda, and Stu Young. It's kind of an odd mix, but it was a really good ceremony. It was great to connect with Elder Shirley and Gordon. I hadn't seen them in a while. But I decided to take the bus in. So I had my scooter, and this is maybe some advice for people who are stuck in traffic. I took the bus in, it was in the afternoon, came back at about 4 o'clock. So the traffic was building. And so when the bus slowed down and got stuck in traffic, I said, I'm getting off at the next stop. And I told the bus driver that I'll see you in Sooke in about half an hour. And so I took my e-bike, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I arrived at home, which is west of the town center, 25 minutes before the bus was scheduled to land in the town center. So that's a nice way to avoid the traffic. And so this past weekend, I attended the Sooke Fall Fair. I won a couple of awards for some entrants that I put in, but the attendance was down compared to previous years, and I'm not sure if that was a result of the hot weather that we've had recently or not, but I would encourage people to attend the fall fair because it was the 111th year, and it was there was a lot to see and do there. And the other thing I think most people have probably heard, I was at the night market last week and spoke with one of the Harborside Lions, who's also a volunteer at the food bank. And the food bank, for the first time in its history, had to close early because they ran out of food. And so that's very disturbing. So I hope that anyone that can contribute to the food bank will do so. And that's about it for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lajeunesse. Councillor Bateman.
All right, well, following up, it's a good thing we doubled the food bank's service agreement. So we're stepping up here and must continue to do so. As for biosolids, you're right. There's a tiered system. Tier number one, the best possible use is thermal incineration. And the forest fertilization option is in tier 3 as a very much last desperate resort if all other options fail. Tier 2 includes all of these out of region compliance options. Send it to the Lafarge cement plant is goal 1, and then other places which do accept forest fertilization are prepared, like the Nanaimo Regional District. Increasingly, though, I saw in the New York Times an article recently about just the increasing awareness of the science of forever chemicals. And so this forest fertilization approach, which is being used around the world, is in serious question now. So, but yeah, good for the CRD to be worried and to be very clear and strong, the JDF, I should say, to be very clear about no, thank you. So for me, summer flew by. There was, the events in town. I got to the music festival and the All Sooke Day and the Heritage Row block party. And I know a number of you were also at those events. I spent part of my time with a group of people organizing an event that's going to be called Changing the Narrative, the Sooke Community Context on Harm Reduction, Prevention, Treatment, Enforcement, and Housing. So this relates to the Sooke Homelessness Coalition, and this will happen on October 9th at EMCS. And Dr. Murray Fife will be there, along with a whole range of frontline workers in this field. And so the key there is to address misinformation with some real hard, clear data and experience. I'm also a member of the Sooke Multi-Belief Initiative, and we've been planning the latest of our non-confrontational election forums. And as Councillor Lajeunesse and Mr. Evans know, this is happening on October 7th at EMCS. So this is co-presented by the Multi-Belief Initiative and the Sooke Chamber of Commerce. And when we say no confrontation, that means, and this is the 5th of these over various federal, provincial, and municipal elections, it means no name calling, tearing strips off your opponents. We ask candidates to share their thoughts in a caring, i.e. no fun, but it is what it is. And beyond that, the Victoria Family Court's campaign to get long-term stable funding for the MIST program, the Mobile Youth Services Team, has been thumbs down from the province at this point, given all sorts of other funding sources. So that campaign has to reorganize itself and we'll be doing that at our meeting in another 2 weeks. Beyond that, the summer flew by, and here we are.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. The summer did fly by. Just in relating to the biosolids, that is a provincial approval. So the CRD, yes, it falls under CRD jurisdiction. But when it comes to where these biosolids go, that is provincially regulated. So they cannot landfill them. They have to have another use. So it's really not, that's where the CRD is stuck. And the Wanda Fuca under Director Wickham's leadership is just like, hold on a second, as I have too, like, we don't want you bringing all this truck traffic through town all the way out to the Juan de Fuca. Like, it needs to remain elsewhere, and that's where we're stuck. So that is not a CRD directive. That is actually a provincial, it's all provincially regulated. So that's where that decision is a challenging one for everyone. I'd like to thank all the different community groups for all the amazing events that were held and hosted throughout the summer, from music festivals, chamber mixers, a lot of the white was really neat to see there. Night markets, all of our staff effort with the pop-ups, they were a lot of fun. And then, of course, everyone that was involved with the Old Man River fire, of course, and it was put a damper on camping at the potholes, of course. But the park is reopened, and we look forward to next season camping. And also council for stepping up here and there for various calls. In terms of Sea Park and the work that's happening there, a lot of residents, well, why aren't we fixing? Well, what Sea Park is actually doing is repurposing all of that cement as well into the new launch. So they're reusing everything. It's not safe at all, as Councillor Beddoes had said, and we need to get on with it for the youth, because there are a number of other priority asks that are going to come the commission's way. So whether or not Sea Park can take on the gathering place, it is a commission, it is small, it is focused on recreation and arena. And during the day, it's busy all the time. So there's not necessarily youth in there during the day. There's others, mainly retirees during the day, that are accessing Pilates and programs and all sorts of things. So they are bursting at the seams all the time. It'll be interesting to see how ice allocation goes, given that even the U11 group has 3 teams, because there's more than 50 players. There's a lot of kids. These sports are all growing in numbers, and how they're all going to fit will be interesting to see. We did sponsor some youth to travel and compete in the provincial games, notably the ball team. I'm aware that the lacrosse team also placed very well, and also that some of our students involved in track. So I was shared that we don't have a track here in Sooke, and some students hit the track surface, a real track surface, for the first time at the provincial games, and did exceptionally well. So imagine how they would do if we actually had a track here in Sooke. So we can add that to the growing list of Sea Park. We need a track there too. So that's all coming to bear. Remember, to the community, the Bears are very active right now. They're day and night, all the time. Walked right by one the other day, and I didn't even realize it till the people coming my way said, oh, didn't even see it. My mind was elsewhere. Interesting read on climate, Old Man River, fire in general. I'm reading Fire Weather right now. I did end up buying it. There's more than 80 holds on this book at the library, and it talks about what happened in Fort McMurray. So really glad to have our chief in place here, and the preparedness just all around. So thank you very much for all that you're doing to keep us safe. It's a very interesting read, somewhat disturbing and all at the same time, but it's the reality of what we're dealing with. And just for community to be aware of, UBCM is next week. This isn't just meeting with ministers. The main function of UBCM is for local governments to come together and to share areas of concern, share expertise, and to advocate on where there's shortfalls in legislation. The primary purpose is the resolution session at UBCM. That is the main reason why UBCM formed over 100 years ago, was to bring local leaders together and to find out where there's gaps in legislation and to work together on advocacy to the province. Other pieces have come on was about sharing best practices, and that's done through all the workshops that are held. And then the add-ons are trade shows. The minister meetings came about because some local governments are traveling great distances, Powell River, all the way up island. We have access to the legislature. So the meetings were formed so that these smaller communities, when they come in, it's very difficult for them to gain an audience at the legislature. And then it's evolved since then. And so often we tried to get the meetings outside directly with the legislature so that the time is available for the smaller munis or those with greater distance to travel. However, have not had that success in the recent last couple of years. So that's why that is a focus for us at UBCM this year as well, because of the inability to meet outside of that. We did have a meeting with the Minister of Transportation in July, I believe. And it was difficult because we had only about 25 minutes set aside. The meeting started 10 minutes late. So then it's rapid fire trying to get my point across, because now our time together has been shortened. It was done over Zoom. And thank you, Mr. Carter, for being there. The big piece was, here's all the work that we're doing. We haven't been lazy and not doing anything to expand our infrastructure. We have. These are the challenges that we faced, and particularly with charters, going from a rural road with a failed culvert in a dangerous dip, environmental sensitivities, all of that. And this is the work that we're doing, recognizing the environment, the DRIPA legislation, and all the pieces for a sustainable future. We have applied for grants. We weren't successful, so we were doing all of our pieces to get this done. And then also the other work, as Mr. Carter alluded to earlier, to expand the transportation master plan. We are, even if that all is still done though, still have one bridge into town. And that bridge has been closed twice in my time that I've lived in this community for a long time of the day. So even if we do that, we are still hitting one pinch point of one bridge entering into Sooke. The positive outcome on this is that Mr. Carter was able to have a follow-up meeting with staff and to get some answers that he needed. But there is other infrastructure improvement coming to the highway. So it's important that the ministry staff is aware of everything that's coming, because some things like water lines are not within our control, as well as other things that the province chooses to do is outside of our scope as well. So it's just that meeting did happen. It was interesting, to say the least. And then other than that, there's a few community events coming up. The Grand Parade for to support the Gathering Place is starting at 10 out of Evergreen Mall on the 21st. And the Sooke Region Sooke Region Community Health Initiative is hosting a Sooke Region Mental Health Fair at EMCS, which will kick off at 12. And then following that, reminder that the Orange Shirt event will be held on September 30th at our library. And so on that note, more to come. I'm glad we made it through the agenda. So a motion to close, and what I would like to do now is is that council, we have an in-camera meeting now, so that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to the following subsection of the community charter. The time being 9:45, so we still have time. So we have 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. And E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the community. So we will now adjourn the open portion. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us tonight. And we'll recess and then open.
We need a vote.
And we need a vote. So moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Always. Thank you. Thank you and good night.